Chapter 1369. When the third prince received the message from his subordinate, he gnashed his teeth in hatred. He cursed the sixth prince in his heart. "How dare you touch my people? I will not let you off." As for why there was no response even after receiving the message, the reason was very simple. It was because the treasure used to receive information from the world Zeroth was currently being played with by that woman. She was currently looking at Lisiji with interest. Let me explain here. The Zeroth world was sealed from the inside out. It was very hard to directly transmit information. It required a special treasure to do so. Western Wasteland's Third Royal Highness, I never expected that you actually had such an esteemed identity. In that case, wouldn't the way I'm treating you right now cause a lot of trouble? As she spoke, the woman frowned. She seemed to be in a dilemma as she muttered to herself, "But I've always been afraid of trouble." Lisiji's heart almost stopped beating. "Sis, what do you mean by this?" "Sis, don't joke around, it's true. Don't think that my body is strong, but in fact, my mind is extremely fragile. I can't take any blows at all." With a dry cough, he squeezed out a smile. "No, absolutely not. It's my greatest honor to know such a beautiful woman like you. I can't even wait to feel gratified. How could I dare to feel the slightest bit dissatisfied?" The woman glanced at him. "You used the word dare very well, but it doesn't matter. Even if there's trouble, it'll be in the future. We'll talk about it when the time comes." Putting away the communication treasure, the woman said, "Lead the way. I have only heard of the world Zeroth land in the past, so I borrowed your light to go in and have a look. Maybe there will be other harvests. In any case, it is very boring now, and I have nothing better to do." "Ah, you want to go to the world Zeroth land? No problem, no problem." Lisiji nodded continuously, his eyes bursting with brilliance. He didn't dare to speak about other places in the broken world, but the world Zeros was definitely Western Wasteland's home ground. As long as he could enter it, would he still have a chance to escape? The woman suddenly said, "If I tell you now that I was just joking and that I am not going to world Zeroth land, would you be disappointed?" Lisiji smiled bitterly. "Whether you go or not, it's your choice. I have no opinion on it." However, in his heart, he was already cursing loudly. "You damned bitch. You better not fall into my hands in the future. Otherwise, this prince will definitely let you know what regret is." "Pah!" With a crisp sound, Lisiji was sent flying, and a red fingerprint appeared on his face. The faces of the 5 true sages changed. However, after taking a step forward, they stopped abruptly. This was because, after being slapped away, Lisiji was caught again. Although the 5 fair and delicate fingers that were placed on his neck looked extremely good, the true sages were even more clear about the power that these beautiful hands could unleash. This was because the 2 true sages who were killed on the spot previously were killed by this pair of jade-like hands. The woman's expression was calm. "One day in the future, I might become someone else's wife, but I definitely won't be yours. So don't have such thoughts again, or I'll make you suffer." Lisiji exerted some force on his fingers. His face was flushed, and he nodded vigorously. Bang! He was thrown to the ground, and the woman got up. "Let's go." "Yes." Lisiji got up and patted off the dirt on his body. He turned around and said, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and follow me." He acted as if nothing had happened. However, there were still 5 bright red fingerprints on his face. The dignified Third Highness of the Western Wilderness was highly regarded by His Majesty. It could be said that he was under only one person and above billions of people. Yet, after being humiliated like this, he could still act as if nothing had happened, putting aside everything else. Just this point alone showed that he had a good temperament. Of course, the 5 true sages knew that the Third Highness was truly enraged. As the saying goes, greeting people with a smiling face but with a murderous intent, it was probably referring to the scene. Qin Yu was killing people, or more accurately, he was deliberately hunting down the cultivators of that tribe. This person who controlled the flame of eternal night was a powerhouse of the underworld. His actions were very successful. This was because before they died, the cultivators of that tribe were roaring for the western wilderness to pay the price. This was a part of Qin Yu's plan. While he was recovering, he would kill the cultivators of that tribe to weaken their strength and create hatred. But as the killing continued, Qin Yu soon discovered that he was a little addicted. That's right, he was addicted to killing people. He had said many times before that Qin Yu did not mind or fear killing people. However, he did not like to be a person whose hands were stained with blood. However, a change had occurred when he faced that clan today. Every time he killed a person, he would involuntarily feel a sense of joy and enjoyment, and his spirit would become extremely excited. He had a feeling of venting to his heart's content, and it was as if the feelings that had been suppressed at the bottom of his heart had been completely released at this moment. Kill! 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 They all deserve to die. These people all deserve to die. In this state, Qin Yu is naturally dangerous and ruthless. Thus, the direct result was that the tribe suffered heavy casualties. They really suffered heavy casualties. After being killed, they could not be revived with the help of the tribe's secret treasure. These people all needed to enter the spring of rebirth and undergo a long period of recovery before they could be revived. But as mentioned before, when they came back to life, they would still be them. But at the same time, they would no longer be them. For that tribe, this was death. After 2 of the tribe members died, they still hadn't found any clues. Before they could lock onto the murderer, the other party attacked again. And this time, it wasn't just 2 people that were injured. The number rapidly increased in a short period of time. The other party seemed to have gone mad and began to slaughter without restraint. Moreover, his actions were extremely cruel and savage. Every tribe member that died under his hands was sent into the spring of rebirth without exception. The high priest was enraged. He requested powerhouses to descend from the tribe and capture the murderer no matter the cost. The patriarch agreed. He could send powerhouses to Boundary Zero, but they needed time to prepare. Before this, he could only send out an order to Boundary Zero, requesting that all the tribe members retreat and gather together to avoid further casualties. It wasn't just because they didn't want to bear more casualties. Another important reason was that the capacity of the spring of rebirth wasn't infinite. If the number of people killed continued to increase, it would soon surpass its limit. At that time, the entire tribe would have to withstand the terrifying suction force from the spring of rebirth. This sort of feeling had appeared many years ago. As long as they had memories of it, they would never want to experience it a second time. Is this the rumor that our tribe will face a turbulence? The patriarch slowly spoke from the main seat of the hall. His eyes lit up. Perhaps the high priest's actions have left behind hidden dangers. But as the patriarch, I will do my best to protect our tribe. No matter who you are, I will find you, kill you, and completely erase everything. The order had been passed down. The tribe that was originally crazily chasing after the wandering cultivators were now desperately running back. Their faces were filled with shock and anger. This was definitely the first time. As the most powerful faction in Boundary Zero, they were being hunted down by others. It was said that the tribe had suffered heavy casualties. Many people had been sent into the spring of rebirth and could only wake up after a long period of time. But entering the spring of rebirth was something that none of them wanted to face. Damn it! Just who was the one who did this? Our tribe is an anomaly in the desolate world. We have long surpassed the norm. Besides those of the same bloodline, who else could do this? Could it be that the one who did this today was someone of our tribe's bloodline? No, that's impossible. The number of people in our tribe has been determined by the heavens and earth. It cannot be more or less. Unless the fate of our tribe collapses, there will be no change. Find the culprit. We must find the culprit. If we can't get rid of this person and find out the root of this matter, our tribe will never have a day of peace. In the fragment of the small world, 327's face was ashen, because the anger in his chest was burning and his fingers were trembling. Who was it? who was it that massacred our tribe and caused endless slaughter? For many years, that tribe had never suffered such a huge loss. Plus, in the broken world, he was the leader. The tribe order did not express any dissatisfaction with him. It only ordered them to recall their tribe members and wait for the experts of the tribe to descend to the broken world. However, this matter happened when he was in power, so no one would care about it. This matter had nothing to do with him. In other words, 327 would lose a lot of points. His support in the tribe would also decrease. 418 said in a low voice, 327, you must maintain your calm. What we can do now is to gather back our tribe members as soon as possible. We must not give the culprit any more chances to take advantage of us and do our best to avoid more casualties. Once the experts of the tribe descend, they will naturally have a way to find this person. At that time, we can think of a way to make up for our mistakes. With a deep breath, 327 nodded. I will find him. I will definitely find him. Master, you must stop. If you don't act now, then the plan we spent so much effort preparing will be for naught. The stone pagoda loudly roared. But he had done similar things many times already. Yet, he still couldn't wake Chinyu up, because at this moment he seemed to have fallen into a demonic trance. Within his blood-red eyes, there was only an icy cold killing intent that tumbled about. At the start, as he watched Chinyu wantonly slaughter the cultivators of that tribe, the stone pagoda also enjoyed it. In fact, the joy he felt wasn't any less than Chinyu's. Thus he chose to acquiesce. When Chinyu attacked, he even took the initiative to help him. At the same time, the cultivators of that tribe died more cleanly and cleanly. Of course, they would also suffer more pain. But now the situation had changed. The cultivators of that tribe were rapidly retreating. They seemed to have sensed something, and there were fewer and fewer of their clansmen left outside. They had to stop the slaughter. Otherwise, the plan couldn't continue. Although all of this wasn't in vain, it wouldn't be able to achieve their original goal of killing people. In addition, after seeing Li Ijo summon the Eye of Eternal Night, the stone pagoda was worried that if Chinyu continued, he would soon suffer a backlash from that tribe. Master, wake up. Hurry and wake up. Chinyu's eyes were blood-red and his face was filled with cruelty and madness. He raised his head and took a deep breath, as if he could smell something in the air. His lips curved up in a diabolical grin. I've found you. Shwa, he stepped forwards. His speed was terrifyingly fast as he vanished without a trace. A moment later, he reappeared. His figure fell down from the skies like a great stone, blocking the path of two cultivators of that tribe. He lifted a hand and punched out, Die! Run! Hurry and run! The two cultivators of that tribe turned and fled. They had already received the message and knew that their enemy was formidable and unrivaled. But even if they wanted to escape, they didn't have enough time. The terrifying fluctuations of strength behind them swept towards them like raging waves. Bang! With a loud explosion, the relatively unlucky one was sent flying backwards. His body was like a ripe persimmon as it exploded in midair. His flesh and blood splashed out in all directions. But in the next moment, it howled as it gathered together. But just as it gathered together, it exploded again. Then it gathered again and exploded again. This process repeated 4 times before it ended. The remaining blood that was less than a third the size of a human head was wrapped up by an invisible strength and vanished into the void. Demon, you demon! The surviving cultivator was scared silly by the scene in front of him. He lifted a hand and slapped it between his eyebrows. He would rather kill himself than fall into Chinyu's hands. Bang! A terrifying strength instantly arrived, imprisoning him within. Chinyu's eyes were blood-red, and he diabolically grinned as he walked forwards. Even if I die, I will personally kill you. Chapter 1370. The stone pagoda sighed inwardly. It really didn't want to do this, because it might expose something it had been hiding all this time. But these two people in front of it were likely to be the last members of that clan they would encounter. If they were killed by Chinyu, then their plan would be ruined. The stone pagoda took a deep breath and began to mobilize the strength that had been sealed away for countless years. A trace of disgust and pain drilled out from the depths of its heart. But along with it was an indescribable sense of anticipation and excitement. Pain. The pain reached the extreme, as if it were tearing apart his marrow and spreading out from his soul. Then there was an icy cold, an extremely cold aura superimposed with the pain, instantly restoring Chinyu's consciousness. The blood-red color in his eyes began to fade at a visible speed. The stone pagoda's calm voice echoed out. "Master, in order to awaken you, I could only resort to such a method. I ask that you forgive me for any offense." It was just that beneath this calmness, there seemed to be many other things hidden, as if it were deliberate. Qin Yu recovered his consciousness, and the memories that were previously blocked appeared in his mind. He took a deep breath and said, "You did well." In his mind, he constantly replayed that intense pain in his soul, as well as that ice-cold strength that spread out. This stone pagoda fellow really was hiding something. That feeling just now wasn't good. Even now, Chinyu felt his hair stand on end. To put it simply, it was like a sharp straw ruthlessly piercing in and releasing a venom-like cold. After imprisoning the prey, what followed was naturally sucking it up. Chinyu let out a deep breath and forcefully suppressed this scalp-tingling thought. Then he looked at the cultivator in front of him, who had a look of fear and despair on his face. "No matter who you are, no matter where you come from, my clan will definitely find you and tear you to shreds." Perhaps it was because fear and anger wove together, causing his emotions to fluctuate too intensely, but his voice was sharp and shrill, almost breaking. But it was because of this that the hatred in this cultivator's heart was completely revealed. A cruel killing intent gushed out from the depths of his heart. The blood-red color in his eyes that had just faded showed signs of reawakening. Qin Yu clenched his fists. He could only constantly tell himself that the reason he was sparing his dog life now was so that he could cause greater harm to that clan in the future. Only like this could he barely suppress the terrifying killing intent that invaded his mind. But while he could avoid death, he couldn't be punished. He could consider this as collecting a bit of interest. "Since you've put it that way, then I'll have no choice but to tear you into pieces and grind your bones into ashes as repayment." With a sneer, Qin Yu lifted a hand and thrust forward. The formidable strength that imprisoned that cultivator began to violently shake. His body twisted and his hands and feet twisted at strange angles. Then, with loud cracking sounds of bones breaking, he was forcefully crushed to pieces by that formidable strength. "Ah, you devil, my clan won't let you go. We definitely won't let you go." That clan member cursed loudly. Qin Yu's face was twisted with madness. "Are you going to call me a devil?" But in reality, this is just the beginning. Very soon, I will let you truly experience the meaning of fear and despair. His bones were cracking and his flesh was torn to shreds. Fresh blood gushed out from his wounds, and large amounts of it dripped onto the ground. "Kill me! Kill me!" His curses had already become weak, and there was a pleading tone in his voice. Qin Yu reared his head back and laughed, as if he had gone mad. "Beg me? Ha ha ha! Good! Then I'll give you a quick death and end your pain." He lifted a hand and pitch-black flames appeared, releasing an icy chill and annihilation. In these flames, you can howl in anguish and perish. At this time, Qin Yu's complexion changed. With a dull bang, as if he had been struck by a heavy blow, he was sent flying backwards. Puff! He spat out a mouthful of blood. His voice was filled with anger. "Who is it?" He reached out a hand, and the pitch-black flames instantly flew back to him. Then he turned and fled without hesitation, vanishing without a trace. After the flames vanished, all that was left was a mass of broken bones and flesh. Because it had been burned by the flames, Its surface was charred black, the flame of eternal night. A weak and resentful voice echoed out. Then, with a loud bang, it exploded into pieces. Blood gushed out and instantly condensed into a mass that vanished into the void. At the same time, Chinyu, who had just fled, calmly stood there. He looked at the place where that cultivator had fled, his eyes cold and indifferent. Here, I have to mention it again, the basic cultivation of an actor. From the moment he regained consciousness to the moment he attacked, whether it was torturing that cultivator, his expression and words, or even his final escape after suffering a blow, it was all because of Qin Yu's exquisite skill. His acting skills. Of course, with the boiling, killing intent in his heart, many of them could be considered his true colors. That was why they were even more brilliant and flawless. At this point, the second step could be considered complete. Next, they just had to wait for the Western Wilderness and that clan to react. It was also time for Ling Xiao and the other three to make their appearance. Shua, Qin Yu turned and walked away. He needed to make the following preparations. This time, he wanted the Great King and Little King to thoroughly engage in a battle of life and death. The murder had been found. A certain clansman returned with serious injuries, although his consciousness only lasted for a moment before he fell into a deep slumber, waiting to awaken. This was more than enough time to tell him who had done all of this. Western Wilderness. It was the West Baron. This was because the murderer had summoned the flame of eternal night before he killed the man, and the flame of eternal night was the strongest trump card of the dark world. Naturally, it was in the hands of Shi Huang. It was a very clear chain of clues. There was no need to doubt it at all. The entire clan was furious. Many people finally reacted. In truth, they should have thought of this long ago. In the broken world, besides the Western Wilderness, who else could possibly harm them? Damn it. Just how did the Western Wilderness do this? No one knew the specifics, but there was no doubt that they must have planned this for a long time. After countless preparations and countless attempts, they finally found a method to severely wound them. And as the Western Wilderness that had always been fighting with the other clansmen to seize the right to rule the broken world of the southwest desolate region, they clearly had the motive and stance to view the other clan as their mortal enemy. In addition, another thought raced through everyone's minds. The information that the Western Wilderness had lost the eternal flame was sent back by a scout. Could this be a trap in itself? In other words, the eternal flame was still in the hands of the Western Wilderness. Their goal was to lure the other clansmen into attacking them and then have them fall into a trap they had prepared. As for why the Western Wilderness did this, it was because they wanted to drive the other clansmen away from the world Zeroth to create an opportunity for them to obtain something from the blazing mountain. Otherwise, it would be hard for the other clansmen to believe that the Western Wilderness would dare to reveal their trump card and kill them even after they had lost the eternal flame. Previously, this was also the reason why they did not think of the Western Wilderness. But now, it seemed like they had been fooled by the Western Wilderness from the very beginning. Not only were they fooled, but if this clansman did not return with his consciousness intact, they would still be in the dark. The more they thought about it, the angrier they got. West Wilderness, West Wilderness. They had to pay the price for what they had done. The clan leader ordered for the clan to speed up the preparations and send the strongest experts to the world Zeroth. Didn't the Western Wilderness want to kill? Did they really think that the Western Wilderness did not develop any methods to deal with the dark puppet body? Today, every clansman of the Western Wilderness that was killed will be paid in blood. Li Xiang came back alive. He was severely injured. Half of his body was broken, and he managed to escape with his last breath. Your Highness, I want to see your Highness. Facing such a heavily injured person who was screaming for his Highness, it was obvious that something big must have happened. In addition, not long ago, the Sixth Highness used cruel methods to deal with a group of cultivators. Now everyone feared him. Without any delay, Li Xiang was carried in front of Li Yizhou. One of his eyes was blind and the other was filled with blood. He slapped the ground with both hands. Where is your Highness? "Where is your highness?" He couldn't see her at all. Li Ijo's expression changed. He ignored the bloodstains and grabbed his hand. "I am Li Ijo. No matter who hurt you, I swear I will take revenge for you." Under the watchful eyes of everyone, this was called having a high EQ. Just one action and one sentence was enough to increase his favorability. It seemed that the Sixth Highness didn't go too far in dealing with those people. After all, they were the Third Highness people, and they had ill intentions. Li Xiang shed tears of blood. At this moment, he felt that with these words, everything he had suffered was worth it. "Your Highness, listen to me. That clan has joined forces with the rogue cultivators. I saw this with my own eyes. This is why we are being chased by them. Moreover, that clan has mastered a method to harm the main body through the puppet body. You must be careful." After speaking, as if he had exhausted his last breath, Li Xiang, who loved freedom, fell to the ground and died. His corpse didn't shatter into dark strength and vanish. Rather, it was left in front of everyone like a normal corpse. The complexions of everyone in the western wasteland changed. There was only one explanation for this. Li Xiang's main body had died. He had used his own death to prove what he said before. That clan had indeed mastered a method to harm their main body. In other words, the previous statement about that clan joining forces with the Broken Realm rogue cultivators was likely true. If this was true, then wouldn't the Western Wasteland cultivators that were sent out to hunt down the Broken Realm rogue cultivators be like sheep walking into a tiger's den? Shwa, shwa. Many eyes gathered on him. Li Ijo's complexion paled. He clenched his teeth. Of course, most of this was a deliberate act, because he already knew of this matter. The fact that Li Xiang came back alive was just another solid hammer, making this matter more and more certain. There was no longer any doubt. "Pass down my orders. Immediately recall all Western Wasteland cultivators and prepare for war." As for why he didn't recall them when he first learned of this matter, it was because he didn't want to expose that he already knew of this matter. He wanted to buy time for himself to prepare. But now, a message had arrived in the Western Wasteland. He was confident that he could persuade the previous desolate sovereign, and soon Western Wasteland powerhouses would descend. At that time, he would be the one who saw through that clan's plot and severely wounded them. This would be enough to make up for his previous mistakes, and he might even be able to obtain the recognition of the entire Western Wasteland. The current Li Ijo was no longer afraid of falling out with them. If that clan wanted to openly attack them, then so be it. He could also fight for himself. He would lead the Western Wasteland cultivators into a bloody battle and never retreat in the face of death. Compared to the Third Highness who was hiding somewhere and playing tricks, the difference was like the heavens and the earth. In fact, if the Western Wasteland powerhouses could inadvertently learn that his Third Highness had joined forces with that clan and the Broken Realm rogue cultivators, then everything would be perfect. So come, I've already made my preparations. The Third Highness finally entered the world Zeroth land. As for the key, he had killed the 2 true divine puppets previously, so it was more than enough to give one to that woman. Suppressing the excitement in his heart, the Third Highness silently summoned. However, the scene of an arrow piercing through the clouds and thousands of horses arriving did not happen. The entire world Zeroth land was silent. Other than some beasts, there was not a single person. Where are they? Where did they all die to? The 5 true divines frowned slightly, and their eyes were solemn. At this moment, they also felt that something was amiss. Peach Girl's second clone. All right, this name was very troublesome. Moreover, he couldn't always call her woman or woman. She had given herself a name a long time ago. She was called Yao Tao. All right, to be honest, it wasn't really the name that Yao Tao gave herself. It was just that she felt that this was her name. Occasionally, some fragmented images would appear in her mind. The people inside all called her that. However, it wasn't important how the name came about. All they knew was that she was called Yao Tao. At this moment, she was looking at the world Zeroth land in front of her. So this is the world Zeroth land. Interesting, indeed interesting. Many years ago, it seemed that a very powerful person had fallen here. Li Siji suppressed the gloominess in his heart and quickly said, Miss Yao Tao is indeed very sensitive. What you said is correct. The reason why the world Zeroth land was formed was because of the fall of the ruler. Yao Tao's lips curled up. Ruler, it seems that I made the right choice to come here. If I'm lucky, I might be able to obtain a great harvest. At this moment, her face changed slightly. She raised her head and looked up. Dong! A low and loud sound rang out. It gave people the feeling that a boulder had fallen from the top of a mountain. After a series of accelerated rolls, it heavily smashed into an incomparably large leather drum. The heavy and dull sound was mixed with violent tremors as it spread outwards at a terrifying speed. The next moment, the sky collapsed. Or, it was more accurate to say that the interior of the world Zeroth land was already broken. The sky that was filled with chaotic spatial flows was forcefully broken apart by the powerful strength that descended from the outside. A figure descended from within. A boundless and powerful aura instantly erupted, causing the internal rules of the world Zeroth land to shatter. A terrifying collision occurred. As a result, a series of loud explosions rang out around him. The space around him constantly shattered and exploded, but he was still isolated by a ring, unable to approach. It was as if there was an invisible force suppressing the area around this person, isolating him from all damage. Li Siji's complexion changed. He cried out in alarm, "That clan!" His face was pale, and his forehead was covered with beads of sweat. This was because this person was very strong to the point that it surpassed his imagination. This person was a half-step emperor. Chapter 1371. The 9 regions of the Great Desolation were divided into 5 upper and 4 lower regions. The 9 sovereigns ruled the world together, making it the peak of the Great Desolation region. Below the 9 emperors were the rulers of the Great Wilderness. They were either independent or attached to the 9 regions. All of them were below 1 person and above billions. Some of the best among them had heaven-defying fortuitous encounters. Some had powerful bloodlines and extraordinary talents, and their strength far surpassed those of the same realm. Those whose strength was recognized by De Huang were half-step emperors. There was a rumor in the great wastelands that half-emperors were the pinnacle existences in the world. If one was able to rule over 1 billion territories and obtain the blessing of the great wastelands, then one would be able to soar to become the 10th emperor of the wastelands. Even though the rumors had always been rumors, and the 10th emperor had yet to be born in the great desolation after the passage of countless years, it was enough to show how powerful a half-emperor was. It could be said that they were second only to the 9 emperors of the deserted world, existences that surpassed sovereigns. Something big had happened. Li Siji was drenched in cold sweat. There was no longer a need to think about this. If a half-emperor ranked existence were to forcefully enter the broken world, they would have to pay a huge price. This was something that Shi Huang had done before. As the son that His Majesty valued the most, he naturally knew about it. That clan didn't hesitate to pay a price to forcefully descend into the half-sovereign realm. Even an idiot would know that some sort of huge change must have occurred. What the hell happened? The letter only said that Old Six had made a move on his people, nothing else. A bunch of bastards, such an important matter, yet they didn't know anything at all. They should be torn into pieces. While Li Siji was shocked and furious, the quasi-monarch realm expert that had descended to the Zeroth world looked at Yixing. In the next moment, a ball of cold light suddenly burst out from the depths of his eyes. Die! With a roar, he raised his hand and pressed it down without any hesitation. When a half-emperor stage expert made his move, even though he had crossed worlds and forcefully barged into the broken world, his cultivation realm would definitely be restricted and he would not be able to use his full power. However, even though he only had 30 to 40% of his power left, his strength was still extremely terrifying. At this moment, he raised his hand and pressed down. Rumble! The heavens and earth shook and roared. The roar was like the collapse of a vast ocean, and the waves engulfed the heavens and earth. The expressions of the 5 sages changed. Without any hesitation, they screamed and attacked at the same time. Boundless darkness burst forth in an instant. At the same time, the projection of the 5 heavenly great Taos quickly appeared from the darkness. The power of a true divine erupted without reservation. The interior of the Zeroth world was close to the true divine forbidden zone. Rashly summoning the great Tao to descend would definitely cause severe injuries to oneself. However, at this moment, the 5 true sages of the West Wilderness couldn't care less about this. If they tried to preserve their strength in the face of a half-emperor, they would be courting death. The darkness was smashed into pieces, and the 5 shadows of the great path collapsed at the same time. The 5 true sages of the West Wilderness spat out a mouthful of blood. Kacha! Kacha! Cracks appeared on the surface of their bodies. Your Highness, run! One of the true divines roared as his face was filled with shock. When the 5 of them worked together, they faced a half-martial monarch, whose strength was greatly reduced, and whose puppet body nearly shattered with one strike. His strength was even more terrifying than they had imagined. At most, they could block one more attack from him. The half-emperor's voice was icy cold. Flee? None of you will be able to escape today. Li Siji screamed. I am the 3rd prince of the Western Wilderness, the son of the current desolate emperor. May I ask why the half-emperor is so angry? Even if I die, I want to die with an understanding. That half-emperor's voice became even colder. You still want to put on an act at this time? Do you really think that my race is easy to bully? Do you really think that we don't dare to shed all pretense of cordiality with the Western wasteland? Today, I have descended to the broken world to turn the Western Wilderness into a river of blood. With a punch, a terrifying force shook the heavens and earth. The 5 true sages of the Western Wilderness roared in pain as their bodies collapsed at the same time. Their great Taos had already been heavily injured by the half-emperor's might. Even if they didn't die, they would need a long time to recover bit by bit. This was the might of a half-emperor. Against 5 true sages who had summoned their great Taos, it could easily suppress them. Moreover, it was in an incomplete state. Li Siji's guts were about to explode. That half-emperor had killed the puppet bodies of 5 true sages. Naturally, he wouldn't care about a prince like him. Now that he was not a true sage, it was possible that he would die after being killed by that half-emperor. After entering the world Zeroth, he thought that he would have more chances to escape. But why did things suddenly reach this stage? That half-emperor descended and killed without saying a word. He didn't care about the Western Wilderness at all and didn't give any explanation. However, from the half-emperor's words, it seemed like that half-emperor had suffered a loss before. That was why they didn't hesitate to descend to take revenge. Damn you, 6th brother. What have you done, you bastard? You actually enraged that half-emperor and made such a move that is the same as breaking off all relations with my Western Wilderness. Bang! A terrifying strength instantly arrived, completely covering Li Siji. He instantly lost all ability to think. He could only subconsciously widen his eyes. At this moment in his perception, it was like the sky had collapsed. Yao Tao frowned. Her eyes were incomparably bright. When that half-emperor arrived, her eyes had already locked onto him. Before, she had said that she was a person who was afraid of trouble. She wasn't lying about this. But today's situation was that even though she didn't provoke trouble, trouble had come looking for her on its own. After imprisoning Li Siji's soul, she could sense everything and control him in the palm of her hand. She didn't need to worry about a backlash, but she still needed to pay a small price. For instance, if Li Siji was really killed by that half-emperor and his soul was destroyed, she would also be implicated and lose a part of her soul. And this was something that Yao Tao couldn't accept. She couldn't lose her soul, not even the tiniest bit. It wasn't easy for her to live like this, so she couldn't allow herself to lose her freedom. Thus, Li Siji couldn't die, at least not now. In other words, if Yao Tao wanted to save him, she would have to face that half-emperor head-on. This was truly big trouble. Yao Tao hesitated for a moment, but in the end, she still chose to act. The moment that half-emperor attacked, a bright light burst out from deep within her eyes. She took a step forward and lifted her hand. The half-emperor frowned, and then his eyes turned cold. A mere broken world true saint actually dared to try and stop him? He really didn't know what death was. But soon, the cold light in his eyes turned into endless anger. With a roar, a wild strength broke out from his body, instantly shattering the surrounding space and forming a terrifying, destructive wave that swept outwards. The small world fragment below and the turbulent space around it were all torn apart, falling into absolute destruction. This was the result of the anger of a half-emperor. Everything would be destroyed. And the reason he was angry was because his time was forcefully stolen at this moment. Drip, drip, drip. The sound of water dripping suddenly entered his ears. An ancient and giant clock phantom appeared. It was incomparably dim, but it seemed to represent a powerful will that couldn't be resisted. At this moment, it appeared above the half-emperor's head, and the needle rapidly spun. The half-emperor within the destructive wave coldly locked onto Yao Tao. Then he coldly snorted. In the next moment, he disappeared from sight. For a half-emperor to descend into the broken world, not only did they have to pay a great price, but their strength was also greatly reduced, and they could only stay for a short period of time. And just now, Yao Tao's finger had stolen the time from the half-emperor's body. This forced him to retreat as soon as he arrived. Of course, it wasn't easy for Yao Tao to do this. Her face paled and her eyes dimmed. In particular, that cold snort from the half-emperor before he left was like a bolt of thunder exploding in her mind. If it wasn't for the fact that her soul was strong enough and her will was incomparably firm, that cold snort might have shattered her soul. Li Siji finally found a chance. As Yao Tao coughed and blood flowed out from the corners of her lips, he screamed out in pain, and blood gushed out from every orifice of his head. That's right. As if he had suddenly been pressurized, his entire face was soaked in blood, instantly turning into a gourd of blood. At the cost of shattering nearly half his soul, he finally escaped from the imprisonment as Yao Tao withstood the attack. Without hesitation, he turned and fled. Shwa! His figure submerged into the turbulent flows of space, vanishing from sight. Yao Tao lifted a hand and wiped the blood from the corners of her lips. Her lips curved up in a smile. Interesting, you actually managed to escape. It seems I underestimated you. You're quite ruthless to yourself. But I'm someone who rarely suffers losses, so sooner or later we'll settle accounts. She looked up at the skies and subconsciously rubbed her temples. But the other one is quite troublesome, a half-emperor. Although I don't know what level he's at. He's definitely much stronger than me. It's impossible to take revenge in a short period of time, and I have to be careful not to be killed. What a loss. I've suffered a great loss this time. Yao Tao turned and left. With a single step, she escaped into the turbulent flows of space. But a strange scene appeared. The turbulent flows of space around her actually separated, unable to touch her at all and unable to complete a spatial transfer. I'm someone who rarely suffers losses. First, I'm a narrow-minded person. Whenever I suffer a loss, I'll always find a way to get it back. Second, my luck is quite good. As long as I suffer a loss, I can quickly make up for it elsewhere. So, in general, I rarely suffer losses. World Zeroth, land, the place where the ruler perished. Western desolation, that clan descending to fight for it. It's obvious that it isn't simple. Perhaps I'll have a harvest. Yao Tao revealed a smile, like flowers blooming in spring. Her entire person was incomparably beautiful. At this moment, Yao Tao suddenly raised an eyebrow. Not only did her actions not seem casual. But when combined with the surprise on her face, it made her seem particularly charming and charming. Because at this time, she suddenly felt a strange aura. It wasn't a treasure, but rather a person. Although they were extremely far away, they were able to touch her heart and make her heart race. At this time, Yao Tao felt something she had never felt before. She frowned, and her complexion became dignified. She stopped and looked somewhere in the turbulent flows of space. In the next moment, she lifted a hand and slashed forward. The turbulent flows of space separated, revealing a straight channel. Whoosh! Yao Tao's figure held far away. As he flew, Qin Yu suddenly stopped. He looked up in a certain direction, and his pupils shrank, revealing a strong sense of dread. This aura was so strong. Although they were separated by an endless distance, he could still feel it. It was like a collapsing mountain, a terrifying pressure that couldn't be resisted at all. This was an absolute suppression, a strength that Qin Yu had never seen before. Could it be a powerhouse from the Western Desolation or that clan? But the world rules of World Zeroth were broken. Even Saint Dao cultivators would be restrained if they entered. So how could there be a stronger powerhouse descending? As the person who single-handedly orchestrated the whole incident and messed up the situation of World Zeroth, causing both the Western Desolation and that clan to suffer heavy losses, it would be a lie to say that Qin Yu wasn't panicking. All right, to be honest, he was panicking now. He knew that if Qin Yu was discovered, he would definitely die. It shouldn't be. The final battle hadn't erupted yet, and the time to go all out had not arrived yet. How could a super powerhouse descend now? This was out of Qin Yu's expectations. Could it be that there was an unknown flaw in his plan? Just as Qin Yu's heart was shaking, the terrifying aura in the distance suddenly disappeared. That's right, it disappeared all of a sudden, as if it had never appeared. There was no trace left. His heart relaxed. It was as if the dark clouds that shrouded his mind were blown away by a strong wind. Qin Yu raised his hand and rubbed his eyebrows. What was going on? The person who suddenly descended, released his aura a few times, and then left? Was this not a joke? This was World Zeroth, not a place where peacocks spread their tails. It wasn't easy to come here. Was it just to scare him? He couldn't figure it out. But no matter how Qin Yu tried to sense it, he couldn't find anything. In addition to the relaxed feeling in his mind, the other party had really left. Rubbing his eyebrows again, Qin Yu let out a breath. He thought that it was fine to leave. No matter what the reason was, it was still a good thing for him. Then, should he continue with the next plan? Qin Yu thought for a moment. He really couldn't find a reason to stop or change. So he continued. Cough. Although he didn't want to admit it, the truth was that he was indeed a little scared. After a moment, Qin Yu, who was hurrying along, suddenly frowned. He felt as if he was being stared at by something. He stopped moving and waited with rapt attention, but nothing happened. He carefully sensed his surroundings. Everything was quiet, and there was no abnormality. But as time passed, the feeling of being stared at became more and more intense. Qin Yu's face became gloomy. His first thought was, could it be that the person who had just descended had stealthily snuck over and wanted to give him a surprise? But this thought only appeared for a moment before it was suppressed in his heart. It was completely unnecessary, and it was impossible. A powerful existence with such an aura, if it wanted to do something to him, it could directly take action. There was no need to be so wretched. What was going on? Qin Yu's scalp began to tingle, and his breathing became uneven. His intuition told him that he was in trouble, but he had no clue where the trouble was coming from. This sort of unknown problem was the most thorny, and also the most headache-inducing. Perhaps he could try moving quickly to avoid it? Without hesitation, Qin Yu's figure instantly rushed out, his speed erupting to the fastest. A moment later, Qin Yu's face darkened. It was useless. The feeling of being stared at was still there. It didn't weaken because he moved, but instead became even more intense than before. It was like some unknown existence was rushing towards him at an astonishing speed from far away. He couldn't avoid it, nor could he escape. He could only brace himself and face it. Qin Yu was shocked and angry. Could it be that he had plotted against someone too ruthlessly before, and now he was suffering retribution? Chapter 1372. He could clearly feel that danger was closing in on him, but he couldn't do anything about it. He didn't even know what this danger was. Qin Yu could tell from his own experience that this feeling was truly unpleasant. It was like his body was wrapped in thorny vines, making him uncomfortable everywhere. Close! Close! Now was the time. Qin Yu suddenly turned around. His eyes flashed with a sharp light as he stubbornly locked onto something behind him. He wanted to see just who this person was. Bang! Space shattered and a figure walked out. At first, the figure was blurry, but soon it became clear. Qin Yu's eyes widened, and he cried out involuntarily, "Senior apprentice, Sister Peach." But he soon realized that this woman wasn't Peach Girl. It wasn't just because of the tyrannical aura she released, but also because of her completely different temperament. She wasn't Peach Girl, but she was exactly the same as her. If it were anyone else, they might be stunned for a moment, but not Qin Yu. Because Ningling was like this. Was this Peach Girl's other soul seed avatar? But that wasn't right. If she really was Peach Girl's soul seed avatar, how could she be so powerful? Just by sensing her aura, Qin Yu could determine at first glance that this woman was a genuine true saint of the vast Yang world. What was going on? Did the Garden Master and Peach Girl know of this woman's existence? Of course. What Qin Yu was more concerned about was whether this woman's existence would pose a threat to Peach Girl. As for why Qin Yu thought this, the answer was simple. When an avatar was far stronger than the main body, would it be willing to remain an avatar that could be taken back by the main body at any time and have its own consciousness erased? Yao Tao's eyes brightened. As soon as she saw Qin Yu, her heart raced and she almost lost control of herself. This feeling, he knew Peach Girl, and it seemed that they were quite close. But now, there was also a bit of worry in his eyes. Was he worried about Peach Girl's safety? Yao Tao's lips curled up. She couldn't tell what she was feeling right now, but she was definitely not happy. Since she wasn't happy, then she must be angry. Look, you've made me angry, so you deserve what you get. So, I'm going to punish you. Yao Tao lifted her hand and pressed forward. Her 5 beautiful and delicate fingers slightly bent, and then she clenched them. Qin Yu's complexion changed. He never thought that after this woman arrived, she would attack him without saying a single word. That was only one of the reasons. The other reason was the power that erupted from her grip. It was a terrifying, killing power that came from the law level. The laws of heaven and earth gathered into chains as she clenched her fist, madly contracting and strangling. One had to know that this was the Zeroth world. A long time ago, a ruler had fallen here, causing the small world to collapse. The rules of heaven and earth in this place were already extremely broken. Hence, it repelled the true sage great Tao and almost became a true sage forbidden ground. But now, this woman was actually able to control the shattering rules in the world zeros. Moreover, she possessed such frightening might. If she was in the outside world, wouldn't she be even more powerful? However, although his expression changed, Qin Yu wasn't afraid of nomological suppression or strangulation methods at all. This was because his body had been tempered into a body of laws, which contained endless laws of the world. To make a simple analogy, if Yao Tao's fingers were to grasp the space and strangulation was like an iron lock, then Qin Yu's body of laws would be like a master key that could change shape at will. As long as he approached it, he could open it. Perhaps it wasn't appropriate, but the general meaning was clear. Yao Tao's nomological suppression methods were ineffective against Qin Yu. Of course, this wasn't absolute. If Yao Tao's nomological suppression exceeded the limit, she wouldn't give Qin Yu a chance to unlock it and would instantly kill him. But it was clear that although Yao Tao was strong, she hadn't reached such a level. Thus, the next scene was Qin Yu coldly snorting. His body shook and he shattered the nomological suppression. He stared at Yao Tao and coldly said, "Miss, there is no enmity between us, yet you want to kill me the first time we meet? Isn't that a bit too much?" Yao Tao didn't reveal any emotions because of Qin Yu's words. She looked at him and her eyes turned silver white. At the same time, another pupil appeared in the depths of his eyes. It was a double pupil that overlapped. Coupled with the silver white pupil, it was truly strange. Double-pupiled person. The stone pagoda cried out in alarm, "Master, be careful!" Without needing its reminder, Qin Yu could already feel an intense aura of danger. But before he could respond, an icy cold and powerful aura had already arrived, directly sealing his soul within. In the next moment, the soul-sealing strength crazily revolved. It was like an incomparably massive millstone, rumbling and roaring as it tried to crush Qin Yu's soul to pieces. After being killed twice in a row, even a man made of clay would have a bit of anger, much less Qin Yu. His eyes were icy cold and killing intent rose in his chest. He was worried that this woman in front of him would pose a threat to Peach, Maiden, and Harmningling. He might as well take advantage of this chance to suppress her. Perhaps if he caught this woman, she would be of help to Peach Maiden. It wasn't that Qin Yu was arrogant. He knew that this woman in front of him was a genuine, true sage Fast Yang and was incomparably strong. Yet he still dared to have such thoughts. But this was the world Zeroth land. It wouldn't be a problem for him to hammer 3 true sages with a single strike. No matter how strong this woman was, she still might have a chance. And the reason why he dared to counterattack even when his soul was suppressed, and even thought of suppressing this woman, was because he was fearless. After devouring the power of the innate spirit, he had successfully condensed his body of laws and then nourished his soul. Coupled with the existence of the sun and moon force field, just based on the level of his soul, he was much stronger than before. He was no weaker than a true divine. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to control the body of rules so easily and display such powerful strength. In simpler terms, Qin Yu wasn't afraid of the suppression of the rules, and he wasn't afraid of being crushed at the soul level either. Ugh. Saying that sounded like bullying. After all, the other party was a true sage. Did he think that the other party didn't care about his reputation? However, Qin Yu soon discovered that he had underestimated this woman in front of him. He wasn't afraid of the crushing strength that suppressed his soul, but during this process, some sort of icy cold strength seeped into his body. It was extremely cold, as if he had fallen into an extremely cold ice cave. His soul seemed to be frozen, which affected his consciousness. Even the speed at which his thoughts revolved became much slower. The stone pagoda lightly sighed. "Master, you must remember this woman. Dual-pupiled individuals have been a different race since ancient times. Their souls are incomparably formidable, and they also possess all sorts of mysterious methods. You must be extra careful in the future." As his voice fell, another extreme, cold strength appeared. Qin Yu stuffily coughed, and his face paled. The soul-suppressing strength was like a punctured bubble, vanishing with a light pop. Across from him, Yao Tao finally revealed a look of surprise. She stared at Qin Yu, clearly not expecting that he would have a way to break through the suppression. But soon, she didn't have time to continue thinking, because Qin Yu had already attacked. Bang! His feet slammed into the ground, causing the ground to violently shake and shatter. Dust flew into the air as he rushed forwards like a bolt of lightning. Strong winds rushed forwards, lifting up the hair on his forehead and revealing Qin Yu's callous face. His eyes surged with a cold chill. Blindly defending wasn't Qin Yu's style. He didn't care who this woman was. Since she wanted to kill him, he would first knock her down and slowly interrogate her afterwards. The two sides weren't too far apart. With Qin Yu's current strength, he erupted with a terrifying speed and crossed the distance in the blink of an eye. The woman across from him didn't seem to be able to recover from her previous shock. Even when Qin Yu arrived in front of her, she still didn't respond. Being protective of the fairer sex was a virtue. In a situation where conditions allowed it, everyone should hold on to this principle. But now, it was clear that the conditions didn't allow it. Thus, when Chinyu attacked, he didn't feel any psychological pressure, nor did he hesitate. He lifted his hand and punched out. His target was the other party's chest. If he aimed at the head or neck, the killing power would be far too great. If he wasn't careful, he could kill a person. There wasn't enough damage to the limbs, so the chest was the best choice. It could injure someone without killing them. But as his fist punched out, Chinyu suddenly discovered that the position he chose wasn't the most appropriate. This was because the woman in front of him was completely the same as Peach Girl. It wasn't just her face, but her figure and body. The rise and fall of Peach Girl's chest was obvious, and the most direct result was that when Chinyu punched out, although his fist was filled with killing intent and momentum, it suddenly gave off a somewhat wretched and flirtatious feeling. However, there was no turning back. Facing a true saint-level powerhouse, there was no room to be overcautious. Then, again, this woman had tried to kill him twice already. Was it too much for him to hammer her chest? A playful light flashed in Yao Tao's eyes. She looked at Chinyu's incoming fist, but she didn't seem to have any intention of dodging. In the next moment, there was a dull thud that resounded in his ears. With a heavy cough, Chinyu's complexion paled. His ears buzzed and his vision darkened. His face was filled with anger. What was going on? When he punched out, a wild strength had wreaked havoc. But the result was that it seemed as if he had struck himself. Chinyu's complexion changed again. This was because at some unknown time, the woman across from him had grabbed his hand. She smiled and said, "Does it hurt?" This was the first time she had spoken, and as her voice fell into his ears, it seemed particularly pleasant to listen to. It would be great if he could hear it again. She was courting death. In the current situation, she actually dared to have such thoughts. Chinyu clenched his teeth and pulled back his hand. The woman slightly retracted her fingers. Her sharp, blade-like nails easily cut through his flesh. The torn flesh seemed as if it had been left there for a long time. It had become dry and lusterless, and the blood that gushed out turned jet black, emitting a foul stench. Poison! Chinyu's complexion changed once more, anger rising in his eyes. He stubbornly stared at Yao Tao, a trace of panic in his eyes. It was only at this moment that he suddenly realized that he had fallen into her trap. Chinyu took a step back and stormed backwards. Yao Tao smiled. "You've been poisoned by me, so where can you run to?" As she spoke, her figure flickered as she chased after him. She clearly didn't seem to have done anything, but her speed was astonishingly fast. No matter how Chinyu accelerated, he couldn't shake her off. As time passed, his flesh and blood had completely withered from his wounds. Moreover, it continued to spread outwards, like a piece of dried tree bark. The blood that flowed out became even blacker, and the stench became even more pungent. He tottered on the verge of collapse. Yao Tao suddenly sighed. Her figure accelerated, and she arrived behind Chinyu. "Forget it. I'll just kill you like this." Before she finished speaking, there was a loud explosion, and she was sent flying away like a boulder. This time, the one who was hit was her. Chinyu let out a long breath of relief. Indeed, that strange method of changing targets wasn't without limits. Thinking about it, this was the right thing to do. Otherwise, even if this woman stood there without moving, no one in the world would be able to harm her. After tumbling several times, Yao Tao crashed to the ground with a loud crash. Mud and stones splashed everywhere as she sank into the deep pit in the ground. She lifted a hand and rubbed her chest, causing visible waves to rise up. She gently coughed twice. With a pale face, she said, "In the end, you still managed to hit me. How does it feel?" As the first person to touch them, you should express your thoughts. In truth, Chinyu was a bit stunned as he heard this. What was going on? The woman in front of him didn't seem angry at all. In fact, There seemed to be a bit of happiness in her eyes. Was she a masochist? But then again, this time she hit me in the chest. In all honesty, this was definitely a coincidence. I was just thinking about tricking you, so how could I be in the mood to care about anything else? Seeing Qin Yu remain silent, Yao Tao jumped up from the pit in the ground. She pouted in dissatisfaction. Hey, you're going too far. The girl asked you what it felt like to hit her chest, but you didn't say a word. Cough, cough. It really was a bit hurtful. Qin Yu took a deep breath. Who are you, and what do you want to do? Before this, she had repeatedly tried to kill him, wanting to kill him. But after being punched, she suddenly switched to chatting mode. How could he accept this? Yao Tao smiled. My name is Yao Tao. Remember this name and never forget it. She stared at Qin Yu, her smile becoming increasingly bright. As for what I want to do, if I told you that I was testing you before, would you believe me? Qin Yu was expressionless. He thought that he would have to be an idiot to believe her nonsense. Seeing him remain silent, Yao Tao wasn't angry. She continued to smile and say, Hey, you really weren't poisoned, right? Why don't you show me your wound? As long as you cooperate, I will tell you what I want to do. I will definitely keep my word. Qin Yu frowned. He hesitated for a moment before lifting his hand. The area that was previously as terrifying as dried tree bark had now completely recovered. Besides a few faint white lines, it was impossible to tell that he had been injured. The body of rules had once again proven how powerful he was. Yao Tao stared at it for a long time. Then she let out a deep breath and muttered, Fate, this is fate. But looking at her appearance, she didn't seem disappointed at all. Instead, she seemed a bit excited. Qin Yu took a deep breath. He wasn't in the mood to watch her go crazy. You can speak now. Yao Tao blinked. What? Qin Yu. I knew I couldn't believe this woman, not even a single word. Ha ha ha, I'm just teasing you. I really am a trustworthy person. I always keep my word. Yao Tao giggled as she stared at Qin Yu. Compared to when she had tried to kill him, she was like a completely different person. I'm going to speak. This is an important matter, so listen carefully. Yao Tao took a deep breath and her chest rose even higher. Her voice was sonorous as she pointed a finger at Qin Yu. I, Yao Tao, want to be your woman. This woman was crazy. Qin Yu lifted his hand with some difficulty. He slowly rubbed his eyebrows. He had seen fickle people before, but she was the first to reach this point. The reason Qin Yu came to this conclusion was because he could see the seriousness in Yao Tao's eyes. Just a moment ago, she had tried to kill him, and now she said such words. If she wasn't crazy, then what was? Women were one of the most difficult creatures to deal with in the entire world. If the word crazy was added to the equation, then there was simply no way to deal with it. Yao Tao clearly had keen observation skills. She was able to judge the changes in Qin Yu's inner emotions through the minute changes in his expression. First, I haven't gone crazy, and I'm glad I did. Second, you didn't hear wrong. I want to be your woman. Or, to put it another way, starting from today, you're my man. In a situation where he wasn't on guard, she was still able to jump up and down after being punched. Besides her pale complexion, there wasn't the slightest change. This crazy woman was far stronger than Qin Yu had imagined. It seemed that even if he attacked her with all his strength, he still wouldn't be able to do anything to her. Then, thinking about how her mind might not be normal, continuing to attack in this situation wasn't a wise choice at all. Then he would change his way of thinking. If he couldn't provoke her, couldn't he just hide from her? Qin Yu took a deep breath and said, Miss Yao Tao, today's matters can only be considered a misunderstanding. Goodbye. He turned to leave. Yao Tao's voice sounded out from behind. You know that as long as I want to chase you, you won't be able to escape, so accept this result. I am the woman you are destined to be. Qin Yu's lips twitched. He turned to look at her. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't bring himself to attack her, he would have already punched her. Do you know that I have painstakingly laid out a plan to provoke a great war between the western wilderness and that race? How could I possibly have the time to waste with you? Qin Yu's face darkened. He frowned and said, Miss Yao Tao, just what do you want? To be your woman, she blurted out without hesitation. Qin Yu rubbed his face. Stop. I have something very important to do, so I don't have time to waste with words. Just what do you want? Yao Tao blinked her eyes, then blinked her eyes again. She first said, Oh, so you have something important to do now, but I don't. Big eyes met small eyes, and there was a long period of silence. A moment later, Qin Yu's face darkened. A cold intent surrounded him as he hurried forward. Yao Tao smiled as she followed, closely behind him. Although this woman had already sworn that she wouldn't say a single word and would pretend that he was blind and mute, he still didn't have any confidence in himself. Everything was fine. So why did he suddenly encounter this devil woman? He couldn't fight her, nor could he get rid of her. Unless he gave up on his previous plan, there was no way he could hide anything from her. Aya, what a sin! Thinking of this, Qin Yu's complexion became even colder, and the air pressure around him became even lower. As Yao Tao looked at his profile, she felt her heartbeat speed up and her face flush red. At this time, she wished she could shout out loud, So handsome! So handsome! Mine, this man is mine. Chapter 1373. My name is Yao Tao. I have already introduced how I got my name, so I won't talk about it here. As a soul seed doppelganger, it is very difficult to hide my existence perfectly, especially when the target is the peach garden. I was cautious enough and I was lucky enough. That's why I was able to live peacefully to this day and finally obtain relative freedom. Of course, there is a price to pay for everything in this world, and I am no exception. However, as long as I can live and breathe freely, I don't have to worry about it. I think you will agree with me on this point. This time, I showed myself in public without hiding. Firstly, I was well prepared, and secondly, the condition of my original body did not allow me to continue hiding. A soul seed doppelganger is just a doppelganger after all. Even if it has a high level of freedom, it will die if something happens to the original body. The peach garden was supposed to be the place where I fought publicly for the first time, but the plan could not keep up with the changes. On the way, I met a group of people who claimed to be from the West Wilderness. To be honest, they were very powerful. There were 7 true saints, so I definitely could not defeat them in a normal fight. However, I am Yao Tao, so I will not be easily defeated. Moreover, their strength was obviously limited. I used some trump cards and tricks to kill 2 of them on the spot, and then seize the important figures to control them. Originally, I wanted to use these people to break into the peach garden. However, when I saw the yard master, I knew that I could not do it now. I sensed his weakness and decay, but I also sensed the determination in his eyes. If I attacked the peach garden to find the original body, the yard master would not hesitate to drag me to hell. I was very sure of this. He was definitely unwilling. After all, he had prepared for so long, but was interrupted before he could do anything. However, I still chose to retreat. The key was that I was not confident that I could stop the yard master and perish together with him. The other reason was that he was in a bad state and could not hold on for long. As long as I waited for him to die, no one would be able to stop me. After leaving the peach garden, I temporarily lost my goal. Suddenly, I was at a loss and did not know where to go next. Perhaps it was because I was bored and wanted to broaden my horizons. I came to the land of World Zero. Accidents always happen suddenly. Until now, I still could not figure out what the semi-emperor stage was, but its power was undeniable. Although we managed to force him to retreat, Li Siji also managed to escape. That's right, he is the important person from the Western Desolation that I mentioned earlier. My intuition told me that I would be in big trouble in the future, especially since I was targeted by that half-emperor-ranked expert. But I'm Yao Tao, a woman who never suffers losses. One thing is that I'm vengeful, and the other is that I'm lucky. I've mentioned this before. At the end of the day, it was all because of that half-martial monarch that had suddenly descended. If they were to face that half-martial monarch, it would be impossible for them to take revenge. At the very least, for a very long time in the future, even if they were to meet again, they would have to turn around and flee. He could only rely on luck to make up for it. Originally, I thought that as the place where the hegemon perished, I would reap the most benefits. But now I no longer think that way. Fate had already compensated me by guiding me to meet Chinyu, a man who definitely had an intimate relationship with Peach. I had already taken a liking to him and was determined to obtain him. At first glance, I did feel my heart throbbing with an indescribable feeling and impulse. But I, Yao Tao, am not a love-struck fool. I won't stick close to him just because my heart is moved. If he wants to be my man, then he can't be easily beaten to death. I attacked him with all my strength 3 times. I was determined to kill him, but in the end I wasn't able to injure him at all. Instead, I was tricked into taking a punch. He's strong, smart, and he can even move my heart. Why wouldn't I fight for such a man? Fine. I'm still a little unconvinced. Why can a Peach girl have everything? I, Yao Tao, will fight with you. After Ling Xiao, Xianji, Zhou Lei, and Ruanjing received Qinyu's message, they had been waiting for him. Now that he had finally arrived, he had even brought a woman with him. From a distance, the 3 men sighed inwardly. They thought that Mr. Ninth was indeed Mr. Ninth. Even though he was doing something so dangerous, he was still fated with women. They couldn't help but admire him. How did they know he was fated with women? Haha, it was just the sour smell of men and women. It was so thick that they could smell it from hundreds of miles away. Unless they were blind, they wouldn't be able to see what was happening in front of them. But soon they didn't think so. Ling Xiao was a bit better at restraining himself. As for Wanjing, she felt that she was the weakest right now and shouldn't think too much about it. As for Zhou Lei, he seemed simple and honest on the surface, but was actually extremely nimble on the inside. Of the 3, many thoughts tumbled through his mind, but at this time, all of them were crushed to pieces. Moreover, he couldn't suppress the panic in his heart. Peach Girl. Although the lineal daughter of Peach Garden had always lived in seclusion and rarely appeared in public, they still recognized her with their status. They originally thought that Mr. Ninth had some good luck with women, but they never imagined that she would be the one checking up on them. This contrast was just too great. They didn't see that Zhou Lei was violently coughing, and his entire face was flushed red. He looked a bit distressed. Xianji glared at him. She could roughly guess the reason. She thought that the old saying was right. Men who seemed honest and sincere were often the most unreliable. She took a step forward and bowed. Xianji greets Mr. Ninth, greets Peach Girl, Aunt. All right. She paused for a moment as she addressed them. It was a bit awkward. Based on the seniority in the Sage Dao Circle, it was enough to call Peach Lady Senior Sister. But she was also the well-known Mr. Ninth Butt. She was also the well-known Mr. Ninth's fiancé Dao companion. To call Peach Girl Senior Apprentice Sister in front of Mr. Ninth was a bit rude. As a peak powerhouse that could stand on equal footing with a true saint, she deserved respect. Greetings, Mr. Ninth. Greetings, Aunt Peach Girl. Ling Xiao, Zhou Lei, and Ruanjing followed suit. Chinyu frowned, but before he could say anything, Yao Tao nodded with a bright smile. Good boys, stand up. This is a greeting gift for you all. She waved her hand, and 4 balls of light flew out, each one falling in front of a person. Wrapped inside was something similar to mercury. It was liquid and constantly surged, as if it had a life of its own. Xianji's eyes widened with surprise. 1,000-layered sand silver. She grabbed it and bowed again and again. Thank you, Aunt Peach Girl. Hearing the name of the treasure, Ling Xiao, Wanjing, and Zhou Lei all revealed looks of pleasant surprise. They thought that this was truly worthy of being the lineal daughter of Peach Garden and Mr. Ninth's fiancé, Dao companion. She was truly generous. 1,000-layered sand silver was a treasure that, after being refined and absorbed, could greatly enhance the strength of one's mortal body and allow one to resist the onslaught of the sea of bitterness. In the eyes of saints, this was an incomparably precious treasure. To them, who were about to step into the sea of bitterness and become saints, it was an indispensable treasure. Yao Tao's smile became even brighter. That's nothing. When you break into the saint realm in the future, Qin Yu and I will give you another gift. Qin Yu's lips twitched. He looked at her with a strange look in his eyes. You don't even know who I am, so why are you giving me a greeting gift? And you even said you would give me a gift when you break into the saint realm? Are we that familiar? He originally wanted to tell Ling Xiao and the others that this person in front of him wasn't Peach Girl. But his lips moved, and he finally gave up on this idea. He had said that he would explain more, but he didn't even know the specifics of the situation. So how could he explain it to others? Could he say that he had just met this woman who looked exactly like Peach Girl today, and then he was stuck to her and couldn't get rid of her? He could only bring her here with him and continue with his plan. Not to mention that this matter was far too strange and bizarre. It would make the 4 people across from him think he was a bit too unreliable. If such an important matter were to be leaked out, one didn't need to be a genius to know that there would be great trouble. To actually bring a woman he wasn't familiar with, he had to be insane. Qin Yu took a deep breath and said, "All right, let's talk about the future in the future. Right now, we should proceed to the next step of our plan." He glanced at Yao Tao from the corner of his eyes. This woman was obediently listening to him. His heart twitched, and he continued to say, "Without accident, a great war will soon erupt between the mysterious races and the dark world. What we need to do is pour another ladle of boiling oil on the fire so that the flames thoroughly ignite. But there is something I must remind you of. Not too long ago, I sensed a powerful aura suddenly descend upon the critical Zero Land. Although it was incomparably far away, I have never seen such a powerful and terrifying aura in my life. I suspect that this aura is likely a powerhouse summoned by the mysterious races or the dark world. For instance, the Eye of Eternal Night from before, but it is far more terrifying than that. Although that aura will soon vanish without a trace, and it's likely that it has already left, I don't have absolute confidence. So, there will likely be a great deal of danger from now on. If we encounter a strength that we cannot withstand, we must immediately flee. It doesn't matter even if we have to give up our plan. Do you understand?" The complexions of Ling Xiao and the others changed. For Mr. Ninth to give them such a solemn warning with a face full of dread, the powerful aura he mentioned must have reached a horrifying level. Yes, Mr. Ninth. The 4 of them nodded. They also understood the deeper meaning behind Qin Yu's words. An unbearable strength that they could not withstand, of course. This referred to surpassing his limits. Touching it would result in death. In other words, Qin Yu would flee on his own, and it would be impossible for him to take care of them. Once danger truly descended upon them, whether or not they could survive would all depend on their own luck. This was a very normal thing. Moreover, it was more reassuring to be a gentleman than to blindly give promises. Seeing the subtle changes in the 4's expressions, Qin Yu knew that they understood. He thought that it was much easier to explain things to smart people. Just as he was about to elaborate on the plan, he was suddenly interrupted by Yao Tao. She raised her hand, indicating that she had something to say. What happened to being a deaf and mute person? Indeed, a woman's words were innately used to deceive men. Not a single word could be trusted. Qin Yu wanted to ignore her, but Ling Xiao and the others were watching. If he really did so, he would definitely have to explain himself. That would be even more troublesome. Taking a deep breath, Qin Yu said, "What do you want to say?" Yao Tao blinked. "Can I speak now?" "I didn't ask you to speak before, but you still spoke so smoothly. Not only did you send out a gift, but you even reserved one for someone else ahead of time." Qin Yu held back. He said in a low voice, "Speak." Across from him, The four youths' eyes widened. They thought that even in front of Yao Tao, Mr. Ninth was so domineering. TSK, TSK. It was true that cultivation was a man's courage. Even the dignified daughter of the peach blossom garden was suppressed beneath him. How envious! Of course, the ones envious were the men. Xian Ji had a complex expression. She thought that all men were the same. As long as they had a bit of ability, they would act arrogantly. Even Mr. Ninth was no exception. But as she thought about it, if she could find someone as strong as Mr. Ninth to be her husband, even if she was suppressed like this, that would still be a very happy matter. What am I thinking? I'm actually thinking about the possibility of swapping identities with Peach Blossom. I'm going to die. Xian Paper, calm down. Miss Ninth isn't someone who can make you fall head over heels over just because you want to. At this time, Xian Ji, who had been silently warning herself, suddenly felt a cold chill rise from the depths of her heart. She couldn't help but shiver. She looked up to see Yao Tao gently looking at her. As Yao Tao saw her, she even smiled and nodded, extremely gentle. Everyone seemed dignified and dignified. Yao Tao was truly beautiful, and she was also very gentle. But what was that cold feeling just now? Was it just a misconception? Yao Tao thought to herself. Luckily, this little girl knows when to advance and retreat. You know that you shouldn't be thinking about something you shouldn't be thinking about. Otherwise, I would immediately let you know what it means when flowers bloom. Everything turns red. Yao Tao's thoughts raced. She stuck out her tongue and said to Qinyu, "What are you being so fierce for? I just want to appear more obedient, and when your favor, don't glare at me, I'll say it now. Qinyu, you mentioned that powerful aura that suddenly descended. Was it not long before we met?" Qinyu nodded, his heart filled with irritation. Right now, he really felt that this woman Yao Tao was annoying to the extreme. No, why did she say that? Did Yao Tao know something? Meeting Qinyu's eyes, Yao Tao nodded, a proud expression on her face. That's right, he was driven away by me. He has already left World Zeroth. Hearing this, Qinyu's first thought was that Yao Tao was just bragging. She was extremely strong, and he didn't know if it was because of her so-called dual pupil status. But she had grasped many strange methods that absolutely couldn't be underestimated. But if someone said that Yao Tao could drive away the owner of that aura with just a single strike, Qinyu didn't believe a single word she said. Well, it wasn't wrong to say that he looked down on Yao Tao, but the difference in strength between the two of them was far too great. Someone else might be able to crush you with a single finger, but you said you drove him away? If you were that strong, then why didn't you ascend to the heavens? Qinyu didn't speak, but his expression already expressed his attitude. Yao Tao stomped her feet and glared at him. I'm telling the truth. I'm telling the truth. I'm not lying to you. As she spoke, she grabbed Qinyu's head with both hands and forcefully pulled it down until it touched her forehead. Look for yourself. Across from her, Ling Xiao, Xianji, Zhou Lei, and Wanjing all twitched their lips. What was this? Did she want to tie a dog in front of her and then stab it in the heart with a knife? Moreover, it was so sudden that it left a chill in their hearts. For better or worse, the two of you should at least pay attention to your surroundings. With your status in front of 4 juniors, and moreover, you are all single, is this really appropriate? Qinyu struggled for a moment, but didn't succeed. Then he stopped moving. This was because he actually saw the scene in Yao Tao's memories. That race's half-emperor. In a situation where he was severely restricted, he was able to casually kill 5 Western Wastelands true saints in 2 strikes. His strength was beyond imagination. And there was also Yao Tao. This woman's strength far surpassed his expectations. She was actually able to summon that unknown clock phantom and force that races half-emperor to retreat. Qinyu took a deep breath and slowly let it out. He said, "Let go. I've already seen everything." Yao Tao moved her mouth close to his ear. The clock phantom is a supernatural ability that can be formed when one cultivates the Tao of time to a certain boundary. It can forcefully speed up or slow down the flow of time on someone's body. At its strongest, it can even reverse time. After he finished speaking, Chinyu frowned and looked at her. He ignored the strange and stiff expressions of the 4 people across from him and said, "The threat has been eliminated. The mysterious powerhouse that I mentioned before has already retreated from World Zeroth. But this doesn't mean that we can be careless." After a brief pause, Chinyu's voice became increasingly low. "After entering World Zeroth, you should have a clear understanding of the strength of the Dark World and the mysterious races. What you and I are doing now, if we aren't careful, we will die a horrible death." Ling Xiao and the others bowed. "Mr. Ninth, please rest assured." Chinyu lifted a hand. "All right, that's not what I wanted to hear. It's fine as long as you remember it. Let's get down to business. I was delayed for a while." He glanced at Yao Tao. "Time is tight, so I'll make it short. Just listen." Then he explained the current situation of Western Wastelands and that race, as well as their attitudes towards each other. Chinyu didn't explain exactly how he did all of this, but it didn't stop the 4 people from looking at him with awe and shock. The Skypiercer, sword cultivator, could be considered calm, but his heart was still filled with tumultuous waves. By relying on his own strength, he had stirred up the winds and clouds of the 2 camps, stirring up hatred and strife, controlling everything in the palm of his hand. This matter was easy to say, but it was actually extremely difficult to accomplish. Putting aside his cultivation, just Mr. Ninth's methods were enough to make them feel awe from the bottom of their hearts. Yao Tao's eyes sparkled. She stared at Chinyu, as if she wished she could crawl into his arms right now. He was strong, smart, and had enough methods. The more one understood him, the more he shined. Chinyu glared at her, warning her to restrain herself a bit. But he didn't think Yao Tao wouldn't fear him at all. She winked at him and licked her lips. There was the sound of someone choking on their saliva. Ling Xiao and the others lowered their heads, their faces flushed red. It seemed they were in extreme discomfort. Chinyu's complexion paled. He had to teach Yao Tao a lesson. Otherwise, if things continued like this, she would only become more and more arrogant. But he couldn't help but admit in his heart that it was difficult for him to remain indifferent to the current peach girl. He could only forcefully suppress the fluctuations in his heart and not reveal them. Humph! With a cold snort, Chinyu turned and walked away. "Let's go. If there's anything you don't understand, we can talk about it on the way." Yao Tao smiled and waved her hand. Let's go. Hurry up and catch up. All of you come from extraordinary backgrounds. So how could you still be so naive? How could you be surprised by something like this? This is the so-called 100 experiences of life. You have to experience them all. You have to hurry up and cultivate in this aspect. Just what was this? Whoosh! Chinyu shot into the skies. His thoughts became increasingly firm. He had to throw off Yao Tao. He had to get rid of this crazy woman as soon as possible. Chapter 1374. 327's complexion paled. Anger and alarm filled the depths of his eyes. His clan had decided to use thunderous methods to teach Western Desolation a lesson. Thus, they didn't hesitate to help the 4th half-emperor descend. Before this, he had already felt the aura of the 4th half-emperor. But it only existed for an extremely short period of time before vanishing without a trace. Just now, the clan had sent word that the 4th half-emperor had encountered a powerful enemy and had been forced out of World Zero. One of the attackers was the Western Desolation's 3rd Highness, Li Siji. How hateful! It was clear that the Western Desolation had already sensed something or had already made preparations for this. This was why they were able to force back the 4th half-emperor. In other words, all of their reactions had been calculated by the enemy. In 327's eyes, the situation had rapidly deteriorated and become extremely dangerous. The reason was simple. Since the Western Desolation had successfully ambushed the 4th half-emperor, it meant that their clan had learned of their plot and they would definitely make a move. who minus 327 fiercely stood up, his sharp eyes sweeping around. Everyone, the Western Desolation has wild ambitions, and they will surely harm our clan. In this current situation, you and I have no other choice. We can only strike first and gain the upper hand. Perhaps we will have a chance. That's right, we cannot sit here and wait for death. The Western Desolation is despicable. If they dare to attack our clan, then we will make them pay a low price. I have long wanted to fight with them. The broken world is my clan's territory. How can we allow them to covet it? Everyone roared out loud, their fighting spirit boiling over. For 118's lips moved. He swept his eyes over everyone, but in the end he didn't say anything. There was only a bit of worry in his eyes. 327 waved his hand. Pass down the order. Immediately gather the clan and fight the Western Desolation. Yes. With a loud roar, everyone turned and left. 327 said, "For 18, you stay here." For 118 stopped in his tracks and turned his head around. At almost the same time, not too far away from the small world fragment where the clan was, space twisted, concealing the figures of Qin Yu and the others. Xian Ji's eyes widened. He stared at Qin Yu in front of him, thinking that Mr. Ninth's ability to calculate people's minds was far too strong. He had actually managed to calculate everything. From this position, it was easy to see the cultivators of that clan gathering together. They had murderous looks on their faces. It was clear they wanted to stir up trouble. After understanding the general situation, it was not difficult to speculate what they were going to do next. Yao Tao raised her eyebrows and thought to herself, "Look at the four of you making a fuss over nothing, acting like you've never seen the world before. Of course, the man I've chosen won't be bad." However, Xianji was a little too much. She could have just taken a glance to express her astonishment and shock. Why did she have to keep looking? "Hey, if you keep staring at my man like that, I'll take it as some kind of danger signal, and I'll be responsible for all the consequences." Qin Yu lightly coughed, reminding Yao Tao to restrain herself. "All right, things are as I expected." After that clan determined that their strong reinforcements had been forced back, they placed the blame on the Dark World and decided to take the initiative to strike first. In that case, proceed according to the plan. Remember to be careful. As long as you act naturally, the mysterious tribe won't reject you. Ling Xiao and the other three nodded. "Rest assured, Miss Ninth." Qin Yu said, "All right, prepare to set out." He turned around. With a thought, he instantly transformed into another appearance. He was a bit taller, and his eyes were long and narrow, filled with a dark and domineering aura. Yao Tao's eyes shined. Qin Yu had changed his body. He actually had this trick up his sleeve. If she was with him in the future, she would be able to have whatever type she wanted. Moreover, she could even adjust the size. He was simply a perfect man. This woman, Qin Yu's lips twitched. He found it strange that he was able to guess what Yao Tao was thinking just from the subtle changes in her expression. It was the same as when Yao Tao had looked at Xianji, and now. Could it be that our minds are connected? Bah! How could I possibly be connected to this crazy woman? Coincidence, this is absolutely a coincidence. Forget about it. Let's get down to business first. Let's go. With a shout, Qin Yu flew out first. Yao Tao followed close behind, like a shadow that couldn't be shaken off. Ling Xiao and the other three hurriedly chased after her. It would be a lie to say that they weren't nervous right now. After all, not everyone was born with the talent to defeat an emperor. Qin Yu swept his eyes over them and relaxed. Let alone the fact that these four people were a bit nervous. It was actually quite in line with the current situation. The group didn't conceal their auras, so they were soon discovered by the cultivators of that race. Broken world, wandering cultivators. With a roar of anger, the several people rushed out. Qin Yu lifted a hand and pressed forwards. Space violently shook and an invisible strength surged out. directly suppressing the several people across from him. The killing intent in his chest skyrocketed, but it was forcefully suppressed. He expressionlessly said, "Today, I came here to cooperate with you. Quickly report this matter to the higher-ups. Otherwise, you won't be able to bear the consequences if this matter is delayed." He coldly snorted and drew back his hand. The suppressed cultivators of that race all had looks of anger and alarm on their faces. They wanted to attack, but there was just one person in front of them that could easily suppress them. Provoking them again was no different from seeking death. "Keep an eye on them. I am going to report this." A cultivator from that race turned and flew away. Soon, several more people flew out. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He didn't think they would all be acquaintances. 418 furrowed his eyebrows, his eyes cold and sharp. "Vast Yang wandering, cultivator powerhouses, what matter have you come here for today?" He swept his eyes over the other side. Qin Yu's aura was tyrannical, and he knew he wasn't someone to be provoked. As for Ling Xiao, Xian Ji, Zhou Lei, and Ruan Jing, although they weren't weak, they didn't have the qualifications to arouse his attention. As for Yao Tao, who stood behind Qin Yu, she had a smile on her face. Although she was beautiful, she also had a dangerous aura that was proportional to her beauty. Very strong. In fact, the feeling of threat he felt from her was even higher than Qin Yu's. Qin Yu said, "I am Xian Jiuxing. I came here today to join forces with you to resist the Dark World. Can you make a decision on this matter?" Although he had heard the report before, hearing it with his own ears still caused 418's complexion to change. He swept his eyes around and said, "This is not the place to speak. Please follow me." Qin Yu nodded without expression. Of course. Amidst the gazes of the people from that clan, the group was brought to where 327 was. He sat in the seat of honor, a sharp light surging in his eyes. He said with a disdainful attitude, "For 18 said that vast young wandering cultivators are prepared to join forces with my clan to resist the Dark World? I just can't figure out where you find the courage to come to my clan's camp. Don't forget, not too long ago, my clan was wantonly hunting you down." He looked down from above, his body leaning forward. His eyes carried with them a formidable oppression that covered the several people. Ling Xiao and the others were suppressed by his aura. They stuffily coughed, and their complexions paled. Qin Yu took a step forwards. As his foot fell, there was a loud bang on the ground, and the entire hall shook. He looked up, his eyes meeting with 327's. His gaze was cold and tyrannical, without a hint of fear. "If I dared to come here today, then I naturally have confidence in myself. Even if I cannot reach an agreement with you, I will still be able to escape unscathed." How arrogant! On the left side of the hall, a powerhouse from that clan shouted out, "A mere vast young wandering cultivator dares to be insolent in front of my clan, sir." He lifted a hand and punched out. Qin Yu sneered and punched out. Dong! There was a loud explosion in the hall. The powerhouse on the left side stuffily coughed, anger and alarm in his eyes. He roared as he tried to stabilize himself, but he was forcefully jolted backwards. With a loud cracking sound, he crashed into the walls of the hall. "You are seeking death." With a loud roar, the powerhouse leapt forwards. Qin Yu's eyes surged with cruelty. "If you want to fight, then I will accompany you." Bang! Endless killing intent broke out from his body. 327 shouted out, "Stop!" The powerhouse that had rushed halfway revealed a look of unwillingness in his eyes. But in the end he fell back down. "Yes, sir." He angrily glared at Qin Yu, flicked his sleeves, and left. It was clear he no longer had the face to remain in this hall. Qin Yu narrowed his eyes. When combined with his current appearance, the dark aura around him became even stronger. "It seems that you should be the person with the highest status here. Whether or not you are willing to cooperate, please give me a reply as soon as possible." 327 lightly said, "I don't even know what happened, so why should I cooperate with you?" Qin Yu coldly sneered. "Oh, that's strange. Your clansmen that were killed before, haven't they been discovered yet?" Without waiting for 327 to respond, he said in a low voice, "Time is pressing, so let's not beat around the bush. The underworld has set up a trap, and we have all fallen into it. Although I don't know what methods the underworld has. Since you and I have fallen into their trap, we will inevitably be in a weak position. If we join forces, we might be able to contend with them. Otherwise, we will only be defeated one by one, and we will all be eliminated. The reason I came here today is to represent the sincerity of the vast Yang world. Otherwise, there would be no need for me to bring these juniors with me. As long as you have some understanding of the vast Yang world, you will soon be able to determine their identities. I do not have time to wait any longer. If you wish to cooperate, then hurry up." His attitude was tough and forceful. Hearing his words, Ling Xiao and the others felt their scalps tingle and their hearts leap into their throats. They feared that the other side would turn hostile with just a single roar. At that time, Qin Yu and Peach Maiden might be able to escape unscathed, but they feared their fate would be to be pounded into meat paste. But even though the mysterious race cultivator had an ugly complexion, he didn't turn hostile because of this. If he didn't turn hostile, then that meant there was hope. The four of them sighed with emotion. They thought that Mr. Ninth's methods of scheming were truly fierce. Without needing Qin Yu's reminder, the mysterious race had already begun investigating the identities of those from the broken world. Otherwise, they couldn't just let any random cat or dog have the qualifications to cooperate with them. Not long after Qin Yu spoke, 418 hurried back in. He lowered his head and whispered a few words into 327's ear. A sharp light shined in his eyes. Heavenly Sword Sect, Stacking Iris Half-Holy, Ancient Thunder Dominion, Xiangzhang Academy, as well as the daughter of a peak, vast Yang Holy Land, Peach Maiden. These people all had extraordinary backgrounds, especially Peach Maiden. They definitely wouldn't have casually gathered together and come here to play a game of adventure. Only the leader, Xian Jiuxing, didn't have any information on him. But this was also normal. There were many immortal cultivators in the broken world who didn't care about worldly affairs and spent all their time in seclusion, only seeking to free themselves from the great Tao. Perhaps Xian Jiuxing was one of them. If so, then it could explain why he was so strong. In other words, the cooperation that Xian Jiuxing spoke of was highly credible. Chapter 1375. 327 didn't think he had any reason to refuse. Before this, he had never thought of joining forces with the Broken Realm wandering cultivators. But when Qin Yu placed this choice in front of him, 327 suddenly discovered that this was an excellent plan. Of course, the Broken Realm wandering cultivators weren't doing this to help that race escape danger. They definitely had their own interests in mind. But this wasn't important. Everyone was just using each other to get through this crisis. 327 looked up and smiled. "Your Excellency, 9 Lives, virtuous. My race agrees to the cooperation you proposed." Qin Yu's dark face revealed a faint smile. "It is a correct decision. I believe you will not regret it." Following that, the two sides conducted a series of discussions regarding the cooperation between that race and the Broken Realm wandering cultivators. 327 didn't seem like someone who had just made a decision to cooperate. His words were sharp and ruthless, giving off an overbearing feeling that it was difficult to resist. Ling Xiao and the others sighed inwardly. The speaker of this mysterious race was indeed not an ordinary person, and they were filled with admiration towards Qin Yu's performance. The reason for this was even simpler. Facing all sorts of questions from 327, his performance was flawless, and his plan was closely linked. No matter who heard it, they would think that this was a carefully crafted plan that had been carefully thought out by a group of people. But the truth was that they were well aware that this point wasn't mentioned in the previous discussions. In other words, this was all done by Qin Yu alone. He was perfect without flaw. He was simply a born schemer. This sort of scheming and acting skills combined together in addition to his perfect transformation technique. Holy shit! The more they thought about it, the more terrifying they felt. In that moment, Qin Yu became the person in the hearts of the four that they couldn't provoke the most in this world. There was no one else. Ling Xiao and the others felt their hearts shake with awe. As for 327, he was also satisfied. During the discussion, he had set up many traps and also left behind some flaws in order to determine whether what the other party said was true or false. 9 Lives' virtuous performance was enough to prove that they had carefully prepared the entire plan, dispelling 327's last doubts. He cupped his hands together and said, "Your Excellency 9 Lives Virtuous, I believe that if we join forces, we will be able to defeat the Dark World and crush all their schemes." Qin Yu nodded. "That's right." He stood up. "There is no time to lose. I will send out a letter to inform everyone of the cooperation. Everything will proceed according to plan." Wait. 327's smile widened. "This is the first time our two sides are working together. In order to avoid any gaps in communication, why don't we leave these 5 companions behind? Of course. I can assure Sir Sage Jushing that their safety will not be a problem. When the war begins, they can choose to leave at any time." Qin Yu's complexion sank. He coldly said, "Take hostage? This is your sincerity." 327 said, "It's not a hostage. It's just a way for us to communicate better. Sir Sage 9 Lives, don't you think that this can better promote the cooperation between us?" He was still smiling, but there was a coldness in the depths of his eyes. It was obvious that he did not doubt this. "It's my turn." He had to put on a good performance. Even if he couldn't become a best actor like Miss Ninth, at least he couldn't show any flaws. With a pale face, Xianji shrieked, "No, I won't stay behind as a hostage. Master didn't tell me that I had to take such a risk before coming." She stared at Qin Yu with fear in her eyes. "Senior 9 Lives Virtuous, please take us away from here. If they don't want to cooperate, then forget it." Although Ling Xiao, Zhou Lei, and Ruan Jing didn't speak, they couldn't help but look at Qin Yu, pleading in their eyes. Yao Tao secretly clicked her tongue. She thought that this bunch of little bastards, they usually appeared to be dull and dumb, but she never imagined that their acting skills would be so good. This small appearance, this small look, and in particular Xianji's trembling and fearful screams, it was simply perfect. Something was wrong. Since Xianji had such good acting skills, could she have been pretending before? In other words, it was likely that she really did have some thoughts towards Qin Yu that she shouldn't have. Yao Tao's eyes became sharp and fierce. She had to guard against this. Xianji shivered. That inexplicable chill she had felt before now gushed out from the depths of her heart once more. Her originally pale face no longer had any blood left. When combined with the current situation, it was truly wonderful. Everyone from the other side believed her. Qin Yu took a deep breath, his expression uncertain. Then he clenched his teeth and said, "Shut up. Today's matter is of great importance. Before I left, I already obtained the right to make a decision." He looked up, his eyes cold. "The hostages can be left behind, but as you said, you must ensure their safety. Otherwise, I guarantee that you will all pay a heavy price." The chill in 327's eyes faded away, and he smiled. "Of course, I can guarantee that." He believed even more in the cooperation between the two sides. Qin Yu impatiently waved his hand. "Prepare a safe place to stay. Before I leave, there are some things I need to arrange for them." 327 nodded. "Of course. Someone come and lead the honored guests to their accommodations." Qin Yu's face darkened. He flicked his sleeves and left. Yao Tao followed behind him. followed by the panic-stricken Ling Xiao, Xianji, Zhou and Ruanjing. After they left, 418 frowned. 327. I feel that the broken realm wandering cultivators coming here is strange, as if they were waiting for us. 327 waved his hand. Don't worry. My cooperation with them is only to use them. I have a sense of propriety in my heart. 418 thought for a moment and then nodded, drawing back to the side. He only glanced at the direction that the broken realm wandering cultivators left in, his eyes still filled with doubt. After entering the accommodations that the clan had arranged for them, Qin Yu didn't feel embarrassed at all. In front of the guide, he released his divine sense and searched the entire area several times. This sort of despicable action caused the cultivators from that clan to roll their eyes. They coldly sneered and turned to leave. Qin Yu waved his hand and laid down a spell. All right, the plan is proceeding smoothly. He looked up at Yao Tao. You stay behind and go with them. Yao Tao immediately refused. No, I want to go with you. Qin Yu shook his head. You are the direct daughter of Peach Garden. The reason you were able to deceive this mysterious clan is because of your status. They won't let you leave. In addition, although I promise them benefits, since they're helping me, it is best if there are no casualties. You staying here is also just in case. If there is an accident or some other change, you can bring them away. Seeing Yao Tao glaring at him and preparing to retort, Qin Yu said in a low voice, There is no room for discussion. He paused for a moment. Just help me with something. Yao Tao pouted, a struggle in her eyes. Help you? All right, I can agree, but you cannot take this chance to run away. Otherwise, I will ruin your plan and make everything you have done go to waste. Black lines appeared on Qin Yu's forehead. He could clearly see that Ling Xiao and the others were all pale. Without a doubt, they were frightened. But in truth, if Yao Tao really did go crazy, then it wouldn't be a problem for her to escape. She might even be able to take away many of the heads of that clan. But these four would likely be reduced to becoming targets for that clan to vent their anger on. They would surely die miserable deaths. In truth, Qin Yu did indeed have the thought of taking this chance to escape, but now it seemed he should forget about it. Even if he could ignore the lives of Ling Xiao and the others and ruin his plan, he absolutely couldn't accept this. I understand. After speaking, Qin Yu no longer bothered with Yao Tao. He spoke a few more words to Ling Xiao and the others. In fact, this was also one of the possibilities that Qin Yu expected. Before this, everyone had communicated with each other, and the four of them had expressed that they could accept this. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been such a perfect performance by Xianji that made Yao Tao suspect that she had been deceived. After determining that there weren't any mistakes, Qin Yu stood up and said, I'll be leaving first. You all be careful. Yao Tao nodded. I will. You be careful too. Qin Yu's lips twitched. He thought to himself, did I say that to you? Even if Ling Xiao and the others were turned into dregs, you would still be alive and kicking. Whatever. He was too lazy to say anything more. He turned and left. He pushed open the door and said, Tell your leaders to ensure their safety. Otherwise, I will do as I say. I won't let you have an easy time. With a cold snort, Qin Yu shot up into the skies, soon vanishing without a trace. Tao Nu watched Qin Yu leave. Then she closed the door and said, All right, there is still some time left. Go and rest up first and prepare for the great battle. Then she called out to Xianji, who was about to leave. She smiled and said, Come with me. There are some things I want to ask you. Xianji was deceived by Yao Tao's bewitching smile. In addition, he had a very favorable impression of this generous aunt of his. He walked over without any precautions and respectfully said, Auntie Peach Girl, if there is anything you wish to know, I will tell you everything. Yao Tao's smile became even brighter. That's good. I knew you were a good child. On this side, Yao Tao had an affectionate expression as she pulled the Xian paper into her room. On the other side, Qin Yu had already silently left the small world where the clan resided. After avoiding all eyes, he transformed into Saint Zhou Yen, who had disappeared for a long time. He changed into a large black robe that covered his entire body. Then, Qin Yu made a large circle and hurried towards the small world fragment that was occupied by the western wilderness. In the room, Li Yizhou, who was quietly waiting for the battle to begin, was overjoyed when he saw Saint Zhou Yen. He went forward and grabbed Qin Yu's hand. The saint has finally returned. When you weren't around, I couldn't feel at ease. Qin Yu's heart skipped a beat. He thought that this Li Yizhou might have been stimulated too much and awakened some abnormal sexual orientation. Qin Yu endured the disgust and pulled his hand back. He had an anxious expression as he said, "Your Highness, while I was recuperating, I had been secretly monitoring the movements of that clan. They seem to know that you have discovered their alliance with His Highness Third Highness and the rogue cultivators of the broken world. They have already decided to act." Li Yizhou's eyes brightened. "Really? Ha ha ha, good. The saint is really my lucky star. You are always able to help me." Qin Yu frowned inwardly. This didn't seem right. Why would Li Yizhou be happy? He should be feeling fear right now. "Your Highness, this is—" Li Yizhou pondered for a moment. He smiled and said, "The saint is my backbone. I naturally trust you. There is no problem telling you. I have already sent a message to the Western Desolation, informing them of the plot of that clan. His Majesty the Desolate Sovereign has also sent a message. He will send a powerhouse to the broken world and use this chance to thoroughly suppress that clan. Calculating the time, that person should arrive soon. So right now, I don't fear them at all. If they want to fight a great battle, then come. At least I can have the reputation of fighting to the death for the interests of the Western Desolation." Qin Yu cursed inwardly. The Western Desolation and that clan were truly shameless. They were actually using this sort of cheating method to call someone their lord if they couldn't win. If the Western Desolation really did send a super powerhouse, then his plans would definitely be affected. Completely crippling that clan was indeed satisfying. But what should he do next? Killing people was never the goal. Fine, if it was that clan, then it could be changed into a goal. But Qin Yu had never forgotten the original reason he entered World Zero: to collect the everlasting flames as well as the treasures left behind by the ruler hidden within. Sure enough, plans couldn't keep up with changes. Everything was impossible, and everything really went according to his own will. "Your Highness is wise. Since you've already made preparations, then I can rest assured." Since things had already happened, he could only accept it. He would take it one step at a time and make a timely response. As Qin Yu was cursing the little king and little king for shamelessly cheating, he didn't know that an accident had already occurred. In the distant world, in that endless land called the Great Desolate, the patriarch of that clan, or perhaps the first in the echelon, had suddenly arrived in the Western Desolate. Of the 9 regions of the Great Desolate, besides the Southwest Desolate, there were still 8 regions that remained. Of course, it wasn't just the Western Desolate that coveted the broken world. In the past, the Southern Desolate was also extremely chaotic, but they were too impatient and impatient. After a great war, the channel to the broken world was shattered. Thus, the only channel in the Great Desolate that was connected to the broken world was the Western Desolate. Because of this, with the strength of that clan, they had no choice but to tacitly agree that the Western Desolate had the qualifications to participate in the struggle for the broken world. There was nothing they could do about it. The road was in someone else's home. If they really had a falling out and locked it down, or if they directly destroyed it, then no one would be able to play. But now, the first in the echelon of that clan had broken through the layers of blockades and arrived at the entrance of the channel. Without any hesitation, he lifted his hand and slammed it down. It was as if the heavens were collapsing and the earth was collapsing. Terrifying fluctuations of energy crashed into the channel. As a result, the passageway that was already shaking violently was like a level 12 destructive hurricane at this moment. The terrifying power was enough to tear everything into pieces, causing the walls of the passageway to emit light cracking sounds as cracks appeared. Even if you are the first in the echelon of that clan, you have committed a grave mistake by barging into my Western Desolate and recklessly destroying the channel to the broken world. Do you really think that I don't dare to use the destiny of the Western Desolate to suppress you? A cold voice rang out. The Lord of the Western Desolate appeared from the void. He wore a royal robe and a crown on his head. He looked down on the world, and a powerful aura swept out in all directions. The patriarch turned around and said lightly, "Since I made my move today, I was naturally prepared to fight with you. I also want to know what gives the Western Desolate the confidence to dare to attack my clan." Boom! In the desolate world, two peak existences erupted in battle. Terrifying energy, fluctuations, swept out for tens of millions of miles. For a time, the sky collapsed and the world shook. Chapter 1376. Western Wastelands' third prince, Lisiji, who had destroyed nearly half of his soul and escaped in a sorry state, was now staring at the ugly and strange item in front of him. He was so excited that his legs were trembling. I am really a King genius, using such crude materials, and in a state where he had no experience. He only tried a dozen times, and he actually succeeded. A slight tremble could be heard. The item's aura had completely stabilized. It was definitely not perfect, and the number of times it could be used was extremely limited. However, this was not a problem. As long as he could contact Western Wasteland and tell His Majesty about the half-emperor descending from that race, there would definitely be experts descending soon. At that time, he would be safe. As for why Lisiji hid alone and did not seek help from Western Wasteland cultivators in his weakened state, the reason was very simple. The 7 Western Wasteland true sages that descended with him had all been destroyed. Furthermore, the people that he had buried here previously had all been cleaned up by Li Ijo. In such a situation, Lisiji naturally did not dare to show himself. Otherwise, the first person to kill him would be Li Ijo. Of course, he definitely would not do it himself. However, there were simply too many ways to achieve his goal without doing anything. He could easily think of 10 to 20 ways. But now the inter-realm communication treasure had been refined, and this situation would soon change. Also, that damned Yao Tao, Lisiji, have never suffered such a big loss in my life. You will definitely pay the price you deserve. Gritting his teeth, Lisiji reached out to grab the communication treasure. With a light wung sound, the surface of the communication treasure trembled and light flowed out. Closing his eyes, a trace of spiritual instantly flew out of his body and was rapidly pulled upwards. It crossed the endless space and headed towards Western Wasteland. As long as he reached the entrance of the passage, he would be able to send the message immediately. Lisiji's spirit was lifted. He was almost there. In the next moment, a miserable scream sounded. Lisiji opened his eyes abruptly as blood spurted out from his mouth and nose. In the blink of an eye, a large pool of blood had formed. His face was deathly pale and his vision darkened. His body staggered a few times before he managed to stand firm and not fall to the ground. The power within the passage was incomparably violent. It was like the terrifying fangs of a huge beast. The moment his spiritual will entered, it was directly torn apart. In other words, he had spent a lot of effort to create this communication treasure. However, the passage between the broken world and Western Wasteland had been temporarily cut off. Damn it! What exactly happened? Lisiji was shocked, angry, and pained. He had used the method of shattering his soul to forcefully break free from the imprisonment of the heavenly peach, and his soul was on the verge of collapse. Now that his divine sense had been torn apart, it was equivalent to giving his fragile soul a ruthless stab, and he had almost died. More importantly, his connection with the West Wilderness had been cut off, and he had lost his support. He could only rely on himself to survive. With his current state, Continuing to stay in the Zeroth world was obviously a huge challenge. Unless he escaped now and hid in the broken world to recuperate. But if he really did that, it would be equivalent to giving up on the mission to descend into the broken world. Even if he survived, he would lose a lot of face in front of the desolate emperor. Everyone in the West Baron knew that he was the most favored prince by the emperor. But who knew how much effort he had put in and how much he had sacrificed in order to achieve this? Countless years of perseverance were finally about to bear fruit. Li Siji would never give up. Originally, Li Siji had another choice, and that was to shatter his own puppet body and escape back to the West Baron, with that half-emperor descending. Although this result wasn't glorious, it was still an explanation, and he could reduce his losses as much as possible. But now, this choice clearly wasn't feasible. With his current fragile soul, he didn't have the confidence to pass through the channel and return to his main body. The greatest possibility was that he would be torn to pieces midway. What should he do? Li Siji's face was cloudy and uncertain. But soon, he didn't need to worry about making a choice, because something had already made it for him. Hum! Hum! It wasn't that his head was dizzy, but the high-frequency sound of wings flapping at high speed. As it poured into his ears, his hair stood on end. Li Siji suddenly turned around. A flying mosquito entered his eyes. It was the size of an adult's arm, and what was strange about it was that its entire body was red, as if it were soaked in blood. Its compound eyes were filled with a violent aura. Li Siji's pupils shrank, and he screamed out, "Soul-devouring mosquito!" The West Baron and that race were nearly immortal existences in the soulless world. But that didn't mean they didn't have a fatal nemesis. For instance, this soul-devouring ant in front of him. This creature ate souls, and it contained a potent poison within its body. Once it came into contact with a soul, it would rapidly wither away until it finally collapsed and died. In the early years, the West Baron and that race had suffered a great loss at the hands of this strange beast. Afterwards, they joined forces to wipe out the soul-devouring ants for a period of time, and they hadn't seen a single trace of it for many years. Li Siji never thought that today his luck would explode and he would actually encounter one, especially in his current state. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't panicking. Not only was he panicking, he was about to piss his pants. If he were to be bitten now, not to mention whether or not his soul would be sucked to pieces, the poison would be more than enough to make Li Siji suffer. He turned around and fled. Without any hesitation, he rushed out of the small world fragment and allowed the turbulent space flows to wrap around him. Shwa! With a distortion, he vanished from sight. But at this time, Li Siji, who was wrapped up in the turbulent space flows and running away, didn't relax at all. Instead, his face twisted as if he were about to cry. This was because the buzzing sound of flapping wings hadn't disappeared. Rather, it followed him like a shadow, drilling into his mind. He turned his head, and his eyes passed through the blurry, turbulent space flows. He could faintly see the phantom of the soul devouring mosquitoes chasing him. This was the key reason that these things were able to cause such serious damage to the West Baron and that race in the past. They were innately unaffected by the turbulent space flows. Once they locked onto their prey's aura, they could chase after it. Run, run, run. After shifting the 4 small world fragments, Li Siji sadly discovered that he couldn't escape the pursuit of the soul-devouring mosquitoes. Instead, he was panting and his ears were ringing, as if he would faint at any moment. He couldn't continue running like this. Otherwise, if he was really caught up, all that awaited him was death. Clenching his teeth, Li Siji rushed into the turbulent space flows once more, his consciousness communicating with the 4 eyes of darkness. In the next moment, his complexion changed, and he nearly cursed out loud. "Sixth brother, you bastard! What on earth did you do?" The eye of darkness that the western wilderness had spent a great deal of effort to build was now on the verge of collapse, as if it was a little girl who had been ravaged by 100 strong men. But at this time he couldn't care too much. Li Siji forcefully mobilized the strength of the eyes of darkness. With his status, he indeed had the qualifications to do so. There was a light cracking sound, as if something had broken. In the next moment, the strength of the turbulent space flows arrived, and Li Siji's figure instantly vanished. Ling Xiao received a message from Qin Yu. This left Yao Tao very dissatisfied. She stared at him several times. If it weren't for the fact that Ling Xiao was a man and that Qin Yu hadn't shown any signs of sexual orientation, she might have found a chance to have a good chat with him. She didn't notice that the rice paper beside her was standing obediently on the side, not saying a single word. It was simply gentle and docile. So, in truth, Yao Tao was quite confident in her ability to converse. After reading it, she crushed the jade slip. Ling Xiao swept his eyes over everyone and said, "Mr. Ninth has sent a message for us to urge the mysterious race to act as soon as possible. This is because it is likely that super powerhouses will soon arrive from the dark world." Yao Tao furrowed her eyebrows, just like the one I encountered before. Ling Xiao bowed. Mr. Ninth didn't explain in detail, but if it can make him feel such dread, it shouldn't be ordinary. Yao Tao stood up. Then let's hurry. A half-sovereign was an extremely dangerous existence. Although Qin Yu was strong, once he encountered one, he wouldn't be able to escape. She wouldn't allow anything to happen to Qin Yu. Yes, Ani Tao knew. Yao Tao pushed open the door and left. Ling Xiao and the other three followed behind. She said to the cultivator standing guard outside, "We have an urgent matter to discuss with your clan's young master. Lead the way." Without delay, 327 met with Yao Tao and the others. When he heard the contents of Qin Yu's message from her, his complexion changed. "Is Sir Virtuous Joshing's message reliable?" Yao Tao said, "Our two sides have joined forces. If it is some groundless matter, then Senior Virtuous Joshing naturally wouldn't speak carelessly. It is likely that an extremely strong powerhouse will arrive from the dark world. If we want to act, this is our only chance." 327's thoughts raced. He had already learned from the clan order that the first clan elder of the echelon had arrived in the western wilderness and would forcefully seal off the channel to the broken world. Before this, he had already tested it. The channel to the broken world had indeed been disturbed by a formidable strength, sealing off all possible entrances and exits. In other words, the superpower house that was preparing to descend from the western wilderness had nowhere to go. However, this didn't mean that the news Yao Tao and the others brought was useless in 327's eyes. Of course, it didn't seem useful on the surface, but as long as one carefully analyzed it, it wasn't hard to deduce certain things. For instance, perhaps it was because the fourth half-emperor had arrived and forced him back that the western wilderness had paid a certain price. Or perhaps that clan had woken up too quickly and the western wilderness hadn't made sufficient preparations. Otherwise, they wouldn't have needed to summon a super powerhouse to Boundary Zero. After all, this wasn't something that could be casually said. In order for a half-emperor existence to smoothly pass through the channel to the broken world and arrive at Boundary Zero, the price they had to pay was something that even the western wilderness wasn't willing to bear. Since they had done this, there must have been a need. This was also an important supporting point that 327 deduced. In short, the western wilderness wasn't ready. If they weren't ready, then this was an excellent opportunity for that clan. Thus, 327 didn't have any objections to immediately acting. He took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "My clan can immediately act and launch an attack on the dark world. But where is the vast young rogue cultivator? Since you and I have joined forces, we will naturally join the battle when it begins." As for the western wilderness powerhouses being unable to descend to Boundary Zero, 327 didn't mention it. They were only using the broken world, rogue, cultivators to make use of each other. If the rogue cultivators couldn't act freely in their hearts, or if they had to divert some of their energy to prevent any accidents, then that would be a good thing for that clan. Yao Tao said, "You can rest assured about this. Senior Sage Yoshing has already promised that the cultivators of my vast young world will be the first to attack. As long as you can act in time, it will be fine. 327 leaned forward. If so, then please tell Sir Sage Yoshing that as long as the vast young rogue cultivators act, my clan will immediately follow. Yao Tao nodded. There is no time to lose. We will immediately send a message. She turned to look at Ling Xiao, dissatisfaction surging in her heart. In addition, there was also a bit of grievance. Why would he rather believe this junior than her? Just you wait. Sooner or later, I will change this wrong perception of yours. Ling Xiao felt his scalp tingle as she stared at him. He felt a faint restlessness in his heart, but there was nothing he could say in this situation. He could only suppress his discomfort and take out a jade slip. After recording the message, he crushed it to pieces. In the next moment, the Saint Zhou Yen in the room opened his eyes. He took out a jade slip and probed it with his divine sense. He immediately deciphered the true meaning of the message. Everything was progressing smoothly. In other words, it was time for him to act. Standing up, Saint Zhou Yen walked to a dark corner of the room. He stepped in and vanished from sight. Chapter 1377. On the observation platform, several Western wasteland cultivators had nervous expressions. Before this, they had already discovered that on the small world fragment, there were movements from that race. The news was reported up, and the Sixth Highness ordered them to closely monitor the situation. Although they didn't know what was happening, everyone could feel the chill of an imminent war. Between the Western wasteland and that race, they feared there would soon be a war. Their senses were sharp and accurate, but they never imagined that this war that would engulf the Western wasteland and destroy that race would begin with their deaths. Darkness surged and a figure walked out. The alarm on the observation platform instantly responded. Who? They only had time to say a single word before they were forcefully swallowed back down. Their eyes widened, filled with horror and endless fear. The person that walked out from the darkness attacked, without hesitation. A wild strength rushed out like a river breaking through a dam, rushing towards them with unstoppable momentum. In that instant, the entire observation platform was torn to pieces by this formidable strength. All of the Western wasteland cultivators that were busily working on it died without even a corpse remaining. A single stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. The complexions of the Western wasteland cultivators on the small world fragment changed. They rushed out from all directions. Qin Yu laughed. Today, I will let everyone in the dark world know that the soulless world is not a place where you can rampage as you please. His feet slammed down and he shot into the skies. In the next moment, miserable screams erupted. With a deep rumble, the several Western wasteland cultivators at the very front were blown to pieces. Within his room, Li Yizhou's eyes shot open. As he listened to the screams and explosions, a sharp light burst out from his eyes. They're finally here. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. He stood up and pushed open the door. Li Yizhou's eyes fell on the 2 Western wasteland true sages. I will have to trouble you two to ensure my safety. The 2 Western wasteland true sages cupped their hands together. Your Highness, rest assured. If we can save you, then we will. But if we can't, then that means your luck is bad. Li Yizhou could guess what the 2 were thinking. He furrowed his eyebrows. Where was his backbone, Saint Zhou Yen? But at this time, it was too late to look for him. He flew into the air and looked at the area where the chaos erupted. His pupils shrank. Broken world, wandering, cultivators. They were the first to attack. But since they did, that race would soon join the battle. Good timing. I fought alone, and even in a weakened state, I still fought without retreating, swearing to protect the interests of the Western wilderness. If this matter were to spread out, who would be qualified to compete with me for the throne? Li Siji began to pray, hoping that the one descending from the Western desolation would arrive a little later. giving him a more ample stage to perform. The Broken World rogue cultivators had made their move. Even though there was only one person, the disturbance he caused was extremely shocking. The angry roars of the Western wilderness cultivators and the miserable screams before their deaths could be faintly heard. Yao Tao said, "Senior Xian Juxing has already made his move. Are you still not going to order your people to attack?" 32-7 paused for a moment, then slowly said, "Where are the other experts of vast Yang? Why do I only see Sir Sage Juxing?" Yao Tao rolled her eyes. "Does young master not know what it means to catch the enemy off guard? The seniors of Haoyang are hiding around the battlefield, waiting for an opportunity to give the dark world a heavy blow. Young master, let me remind you that if the nobles don't act now, they might send the wrong message to the seniors, causing them to make other decisions." This was clearly a threat. It could be understood that if they did not make a move, the vast Yang itinerant cultivator would not entertain them. The foreheads of Ling Xiao, Xianji, Wanjing, and Zhou Lei broke out in cold sweat. They carefully glanced at Yao Tao and thought to themselves, "Your aunt is indeed your aunt. Her courage and insight are not something we can compare to. Her acting is also very good." The more they thought about it, the more realistic it seemed when she rolled her eyes. No wonder she could pair up with Miss Jiu. In the main hall, everyone from that clan had a gloomy expression on their faces, if not for 327 raising his hand to stop them. All sorts of reprimands would have already been directed at them. Yao Tao's words could not be completely trusted. However, if they were in her shoes, 327 would not agree to it. As they charged forward, the rogue cultivators of the Broken World sat back and watched the show. Of course, more importantly, allying with the Broken Realm rogue cultivators was the best option for that race. If they could endure it, they would endure it. All right, since Sir Sage Juxing has made his move, the rogue cultivators have shown their sincerity. Let's take action now. 327 stood up, took a deep breath, and said in a loud voice, "The people of the dark world have plotted to harm our people in the dark. They have evil intentions and wild ambitions. Today, our people rise up in resistance, and we will definitely make the dark world pay the price they deserve." Shout before the battle begins shouting this slogan did not only give them a psychological advantage. More importantly, there was a mysterious power of destiny that supported them. This point was extremely mysterious, but it truly existed. There was no need to explain it here. In short, after 327 gave the order, the cultivators of that race that had been waiting for a long time rushed out like a pack of hungry wolves that had just broken out of their cage. They crazily charged towards the fragment of the small world. The little king and little king had fought openly and secretly for many years, wishing that they could tear each other to shreds. It could be said that their hearts were already filled with hatred. Today they finally had a chance to vent it all. All of them were filled with fighting spirit. Li Siji took a deep breath. He lifted a finger and said, "That race has plotted to harm Western Wasteland. Their crimes cannot be forgiven. Follow me and kill the enemies. Afterwards, everyone will be rewarded. Kill for me." They were like two yaks that had already gathered all their strength to fight. The moment both sides rushed out, they erupted with their strongest strength. They did not hide anything at all. In their hearts, there was only one thought: kill them all. The result of this was that the slaughter between Western Wasteland and that race entered a white-hot state as soon as the cultivators of both sides came into contact. 327 had a dignified expression. He locked his eyes onto Yao Tao. "My race has already gone all out. I hope that vast young sex wandering cultivators will not disappoint me. Otherwise, don't blame me for tearing up our previous agreement." Tearing up their agreement meant that they would no longer be able to guarantee their safety. But the deeper meaning was, all of you can just wait to die. Yao Tao had a calm expression. "Don't worry, we won't die." On the surface, it seemed like she was vaguely replying to 327's previous words. But in truth, Yao Tao was only stating a fact that she believed in herself. The mission that Qin Yu had given them was to cause war between Western Wasteland and that race. And looking at the current situation, their mission had already been accomplished. In other words, they could leave at any time. As long as they could leave, Yao Tao was confident she could escape. Although bringing along Ling Xiao and the others was a bit of a burden, it wasn't too much of a problem. 327 could feel the calmness and ease in Yao Tao's words. But he would never have imagined that the reason for her calmness and ease was completely different from what he thought. Ha ha ha! That race has already made their move. The Western Wasteland will not be able to escape today. Today, I will take revenge for the broken world, wandering cultivators that died at your hands. Qin Yu laughed out loud. He rushed into the crowd of Western Wasteland cultivators and began a slaughter. Broken limbs were crushed by a wild strength, turning into a fog of blood that blocked everyone's line of sight. Li Yizhou's eyes were cold and gloomy. That race was truly a bunch of idiots. Even if they joined forces with the broken world wandering cultivators, the most they could do was use each other. Yet, they actually told them everything that involved the desolate region. If so, then he couldn't let these broken world wandering cultivators go. Once the super powerhouses of the Western Wasteland arrived, he would kill them all. The relationship between the desolate region and the broken world couldn't be exposed right now. This also involved some sort of unknown destiny. Li Yizhou didn't know the exact reason, but keeping this a secret was a rule that all those from the desolate region that came to the broken world had to abide by. If it weren't for this, all sorts of news regarding the desolate region and the broken world would have spread through the entire vast Yang world. But now it was obvious that the clan had completely turned their backs on this. In the blood fog, Qin Yu didn't know that in order to strengthen the broken world wandering cultivators, he had joined forces with that race. Just a casual shout from him caused Li Yizhou's killing intent to rise. Of course, even if he knew, he likely wouldn't care. Because this time he didn't plan on letting Western Wasteland or that race off to begin with. Did he want to kill them all to keep this secret? Haha, he should first think about how he was going to survive. When your two sides are about done fighting and you've used up all your cards, it will be my turn to reap the harvest. In truth, Qin Yu's entire plan was simple. Provoking the Western Wasteland and that race to fight to the death, exhausting each other's strength and becoming the final fisherman to reap the benefits. But to accomplish this wasn't an easy matter. The Western Wasteland and that race weren't fools. In fact, it could even be said that Li Yizhou and 327 were both smart people and possessed a terrifying strength. If there was even the slightest mistake in the process, it would bring a calamity upon themselves. Dancing on a steel wire, carving a dragon and phoenix on a knife point, this was probably what Qin Yu was doing right now. If he could do it, then strength first and luck second. But what about someone else? That person would have long since turned to dregs. Didn't you see the shocked expressions on Ling Xiao and the others' faces when they learned that it was Qin Yu who had single-handedly orchestrated this entire situation? He had already started the battle. Now, all he needed to do was preserve his strength and wait for the harvest to arrive. In other words, Qin Yu had decided to leave. If this weren't the case, why would he need to make such a bloody scene? Killing people was killing people. Unless there was a special need. Any actions that wasted strength for this were stupid in Qin Yu's eyes. He certainly wasn't stupid. So, beneath the cover of the blood fog, Qin Yu suddenly restrained his aura and changed into the Western Wasteland cultivator he had just killed. His face was covered in blood and his eyes were filled with panic. He turned and mixed into the crowd. After a few flashes, he silently withdrew from the bloody mist area. In this boiling battlefield that was like a pot of rotten porridge, no one would notice the whereabouts of a certain inconspicuous little cultivator. The jade slip in his hand suddenly shook. Ling Xiao's eyes flashed. Mr. Knight's signal had arrived. This meant that the plan had been completed and they could withdraw at any time. Yao Tao glanced at him, from the corner of her eyes. Ling Xiao nodded imperceptibly. At this moment, she pouted and wondered if she should accidentally leave Ling Xiao behind here when she was about to escape. She always felt that this stinky brat was actually more trusted in front of Qinyu than she was. This was a very, very infuriating matter. Ling Xiao's complexion changed. He suddenly felt very cold and all the hairs on his back stood up. This felt like the second time, but he really hadn't done anything dangerous. Just what was going on? Could it be some sort of sensing of the future? In other words, he might be in trouble. Thinking of this, Ling Xiao subconsciously took several steps closer to Yao Tao. His auntie gave him a powerful and mysterious feeling, completely different from the rumors. If he followed her, he should be a bit safer. But in this world, there were many things that couldn't be completely carried out according to one's will. This was because, although there was only one chessboard, it was impossible to know how many people were laying down their pieces. Just as Qinyu was preparing to withdraw and wait for the final harvest, and Yao Tao was thinking about whether or not she should abandon Ling Xiao, a group of cultivators suddenly rushed out from the battlefield, hurtling towards the Western Wilderness cultivators. Their identities were Broken World Rogue Cultivators. Their auras were completely different, so it was easy to recognize them with just a single glance. Like this, an accident occurred without warning. This time, including Yao Tao, Ling Xiao, and the others were all stunned, thinking to themselves, what was going on? Didn't Mr. Ninth say that this was a fake plan? Didn't he say that the mysterious race had joined forces with the vast young rogue cultivators to strengthen the hatred between them? How could the fake plan suddenly become real? There really were vast young rogue cultivators that had joined forces with that race to attack the world of darkness. Fortunately, they still remembered the fact that they were acting as extras, so they tried hard not to show too much of their shock. 327 let out a long breath. He smiled and cupped his hands together towards Yao Tao. Miss Peach Girl, I was the one who offended you before. Since the rogue cultivator camp has attacked with all their strength, I will abide by my promise and allow you to leave. Yao Tao glanced at the stiffened Ling Xiao from the corner of her eyes. She thought to herself, you smelly brat, your luck is quite good. She nodded and said, if that's the case, then we will bid our farewells. She turned and left. Ling Xiao and the others hurried to follow. They were also confused and urgently needed an explanation. After leaving the group, Xianji was the first to speak up. Auntie Peach Girl, what is going on here? Yao Tao turned around and looked at the messy battlefield. Her lips curved up and she slowly said, what else could it be? It's clear that there is another player hidden in this chessboard. From the looks of it, it seems they want to take advantage of the situation and pluck the peach that Qinyu has raised. Someone wanted to pluck the peach. After his initial surprise, Qinyu's face darkened and a cold chill surged in the depths of his eyes. In particular, he saw the Broken World rogue cultivators that rushed towards the Western Desolate cultivators. Although their attacks were swift and fierce, they didn't entangle with them at all. Instead, they crossed through the battlefield, faintly weaving together into a net as they advanced. Their goal was Li Yizhou. With this, he could basically confirm that the other party's goal was the same as his. They wanted to obtain the key on Li Yizhou's body. The mountain of flames was surrounded by super-violent space turbulence. If one wanted to enter, they could only rely on the ship above their heads, and to open the ship required the key. It was a fact that Qinyu wanted to destroy the Western Desolate and that race. But his original intention had always been to obtain the key and then collect the ever-burning flame. With the help of the furnace, he could completely condense the great Tao and save Peach Girl's life. So, in Qinyu's eyes, it was as if he had finally managed to sit down at a table after suffering untold hardships. Just as he was about to eat, several people came over and lifted the table away. Chapter 1378. What should he do in this situation? According to his personality, he would definitely retaliate. If they dared to stretch out their hands, if they dared to stretch out their legs, they dared to cut off their hands. But the current situation clearly didn't allow him to use such violent methods. But he definitely wouldn't allow himself to suffer a loss. He stared at this group of people that had suddenly appeared and wanted to take away his table. His eyes turned, and he suddenly had an idea. Perhaps he could make use of this group of peach-picking people. Li Ijo felt his heart skip a beat. It was like something terrifying was about to happen to him. He turned his head and saw the two Western Wasteland true sages following him. He didn't feel at ease at all. What was going on? He took a deep breath and suppressed the panic in his heart. He looked around the battlefield. Although the Western Wasteland was fighting 1 against 2, they didn't show any signs of losing. The battle was in a stalemate. So where did this feeling of danger come from? Suddenly, Li Ijo's complexion changed. Several Broken World cultivators appeared in his vision. Each one of them was tyrannical, and the Western Wasteland cultivators were no match for them. Damn it! When did these Broken World rogue cultivators appear? He had never seen these unfamiliar faces before, and they were all incomparably strong. No, they are coming for me. The moment this thought appeared in his mind, Li Ijo felt his hair stand on end. He finally understood the reason for his heart skipping a beat. His eyes widened in fear, and he pointed a finger. Stop them! The Western Wasteland cultivators moved according to the order. They rushed out like waves crashing in from all directions, forcefully blocking the Western Wasteland cultivators. Li Ijo calmed down a little. He quickly drew back and subconsciously looked up at the sky. He suddenly changed his mind. Who knew the Broken World rogue cultivators would be so strong, and they were clearly coming for him? The Western Wasteland super powerhouses should come sooner. Otherwise the situation might spiral out of control. Bang, bang, there was a thunderous explosion, and wild fluctuations of strength swept out. The Western Wasteland cultivators that rushed forward all spat out blood from their noses and mouths. They were sent flying away like rags. The auras of the 3 Broken World wandering cultivators were like rainbows. They charged out like stones falling down a mountain, shaking the void and making loud rumbling sounds. They were like arrows released from a bow as they charged at Li Ijo. After realizing that their plan had been seen through, they didn't hesitate and chose to attack. They had to suppress Li Ijo and take his key. Sages, save me! Li Ijo screamed and continued to retreat. The 3 rogue cultivators in front of him were all at the true sage level. Furthermore, the most frightening thing was that they did not seem to fear the suppression coming from the world Zeroth as they wantonly released their might. Powerful and ancient. That's right, it was the kind of aura that could be clearly felt from every single strand of raging, surging, powerful energy that had been contaminated by countless years. It was them, the ancient true saints of the Broken World, who had hidden themselves from the world. These people had never bothered themselves with worldly affairs, and they had never left their lair for tens of millions of years. All they cared about was breaking through to the sovereign realm. Why would they suddenly make a move today? No, it definitely wasn't a sudden attack. It seemed that this group of old monsters had been waiting for an opportunity to brazenly attack today. As for why they didn't hide it any longer, of course, it was because they could sense that the ever-burning flame might contain a sovereign lord's relic. They had never given up. Li Ijo was furious. He would never have guessed that a group of shattered world monsters would suddenly attack him and force him into a dangerous situation. As he retreated, he screamed, "The super experts of the Western Wastelands are about to descend into the world Zeroth. If any of you dare to attack me, you will be sentenced to death." Of course, this was meaningless. To a group of old monsters who had lived for countless years, the passing of time had lost all meaning. Their only desire to live on was to become stronger. As long as there was a chance, they wouldn't miss it, and Li Ijo's guess was correct. They didn't leave their seclusion, but they had never stopped paying attention to certain places. For example, the world Zeroth, the place where the sovereign perished. According to the legends, there was a sovereign lord's relic that could possibly help them break through the shackles of their cultivation and become sovereigns in a single step. Of course, they wouldn't miss out on such an opportunity. However, old people tended to be patient. Thus, for a very, very long time, these old monsters had perfectly concealed their greed. Whether it was the Western Wastelands or that other race, they hadn't been able to detect their existence. In this long period of time, these old bones weren't completely clueless. On the contrary, they must have learned a lot of things. For example, the flaming mountain in front of them, or the huge ship that could travel through the chaotic space currents. It was just that they didn't have the confidence to do so. Until today, when the Western Wastelands and that other race started to make their move, these old bones finally made their move. Whether it was the Western Wastelands or that other race, although they were strong, their threat to them was limited. If they couldn't reach the sovereign realm, what was the point of living? The two Western Wastelands' true sages, who were called out, stiffened under the watchful eyes of so many people. If the two of them retreated without fighting, even if it was because the person who came was strong and they couldn't fight against him, it wouldn't make sense. Zhou Yan, that bastard, wasn't here. His luck was really good. Every time there was trouble, no one knew where he would hide. Gritting their teeth, the two of them took a step forward. With a low roar, a strong force burst out of their bodies, courting death. One of the old monsters from the broken world said expressionlessly. He raised his hand and pressed forward heavily. The space suddenly collapsed inwards like a huge mouth trying to swallow the two Western Wastelands' true sages. To him, fighting one against two seemed to be a very easy thing to do. Do it! Suppress Li Yizhou. Don't give him a chance to escape. Seal the space. The other two true sages from the broken world coordinated perfectly with each other in an instant. A strong force descended and sealed the entire space. Li Yizhou seemed to have sunk into a swamp, and his face was filled with fear. This group of old undyings were too strong, and their methods were extremely sharp. Once they made their move, they wouldn't give him any chance. Just as he was about to be taken away, the swamp-like space around him was suddenly torn apart by a strong force. A low roar sounded like thunder. With me here, no one will be able to hurt your highness. Every word was spoken loudly and clearly. Li Yizhou was about to cry. His figure flashed behind him, and he said, I knew it! I knew it! Sage, you wouldn't ignore me. Sage Zhou Yan righteously said, I've caused your highness to be startled. Previously, I was hiding to the side to protect your highness so that you wouldn't be injured by a sneak attack. I didn't think that it would be 3 broken world experts that came. At the same time, another soft voice sounded in Li Yizhou's ears. Your highness, the broken world ancient true sages are working together with that race to obtain the item within the undying flame. That is why they attacked you and tried to obtain the key to Western Wasteland ship. If your highness trusts me, then give me the key. I swear that I will protect it with my life. At that time, these people won't continue to chase after your highness. Otherwise, if you face the combined attacks of 3 broken world ancient true sages, I am not confident that I can protect your highness. Li Yizhou's eyes were brimming with tears. If it wasn't for the fact that the situation wasn't right, he would have hugged Qinyu and cried loudly to vent the emotions in his heart. Sage Zhou Yan is truly my most loyal person. In such a situation, he didn't care about his own safety to ensure my safety. I, Li Yizhou, vow that as long as I can survive this trial, I will repay Sage Zhou Yan 10 times, 100 times over. With a deep breath, Li Yizhou flipped his hand and took out an item. He said, Sage Zhou Yan, this is the most precious treasure to open the ship. I will give it to you. No matter what, I will not allow any mishaps. Sage Zhou Yan bowed. I will not disappoint you. He received the key with both hands and turned to leave. He laughed. 3 broken world true sages. If you want the key, then come and find me. Some things were difficult to fake. For instance, the key to open the ship. The moment Li Yizhou took it out, the 3 ancient true sages knew that the key was real. And the reason they attacked Li Yizhou was because they wanted to obtain this key. They naturally wouldn't watch helplessly as it was taken away. You can't escape. Hand over the key. With angry roars, the two ancient true sages chased after him. 327 finally understood why the rogue cultivators of the broken world decided to work together and why they were able to detect Western Huang's plot. It turned out that the old undyings of the broken world had been eyeing this place ever since they were defeated. It was possible that they had already obtained a lot of information before they realized it. Forget it. With the help of these ancient true sages, Li Yizhou would be in trouble. This was definitely a good thing for his race. It could even turn the tables. No. Even if they caught Li Yizhou and obtained half of the key from Western Huang, they wouldn't be able to open the ship. Unless these ancient true sages had the confidence to obtain the other half of the key. 327's heart shrank. He stomped heavily on the ground, and his figure retreated. The moment he retreated, the space where he was originally at suddenly collapsed, forming a terrifying black hole. To be able to create such a scene in the Zeroth world, the strength of the person who did it was enough to make one's heart palpitate. A low voice could be heard from the black hole. You are indeed the chosen young master of that race. You are indeed sharp and responsive. However, you can escape. Hand over the key, and I can spare your life today. 327's eyes were gloomy and his heart was filled with fear. If he didn't have a certain race treasure on him that could strengthen his senses, he might not have been able to escape. Rogue cultivators of the broken world. He gritted his teeth and roared. 327's face was green. It wasn't only because the other party dared to attack him. More importantly, the other party had been lying to him from the start. What cooperation! It was obvious that the other party wanted to take advantage of the situation. While the race was fighting with Western Huang, they wanted to snatch the key. What a good plan! Stop the war with Western Huang and work together to deal with the rogue cultivators? This idea first appeared in his mind, but was quickly suppressed. The rogue cultivators' evil intentions were real. However, Western Huang's plan was also real. With the rogue cultivators messing up the situation, it might not be a bad thing for that race. Of course, the reason 327 dared to think this was because he had absolute confidence that his own safety wouldn't be a problem. If so, he might as well delay for a moment and borrow the strength of these broken world ancient true saints to weaken Western Huang's strength and disrupt their plans. From the black hole, another hoarse voice sounded out. Why waste time talking to him? Let's attack now. Okay. Bang. The black hole suddenly exploded. Terrifying cracks spread out in all directions like a black spider web. What vanished along with it were the auras of the two broken world ancient true saints that were hiding within. 327's complexion changed once more. He punched out. A formidable strength erupted, roaring out like a broken dam. Dong! As if he had struck some incomparably massive leather bag, a low and deep sound spread out, causing trembling ripples to spread out. 327 borrowed the force to retreat. Wherever he went, space cracked apart. At the same time, the flesh and blood on his body also began to crack apart. The scarlet cracks were like the open mouths of children, and it was frightening to look at them. Protect the young master. With angry roars, the powerhouses of that race swarmed forwards. Chapter 1379. The process of obtaining the first key was smoother than expected. Qin Yu revealed a smile. He really had to thank the three ancient true sages who chased after him. If they hadn't acted and forced Li Yizhou into a desperate situation, Qin Yu wouldn't have been able to obtain the key so easily. Of course, gratitude was just gratitude. Qin Yu didn't have the mood or time to waste on these three ancient true sages. There was a commotion at the location of that race. As expected, there were other old monsters who had acted. To Qin Yu, this was good news. Perhaps he could easily collect all the keys. He couldn't miss this chance. You three, I will leave first. I won't keep you company. Laughing, Qin Yu's speed suddenly increased. You want to leave? Not so easy. Stay here for me. Chase. A moment later, the three ancient true sages stopped in their tracks. Their faces were ashen. In front of them was the battlefield between the western wilderness and that race. However, no matter how hard they tried, they could not find the aura of Sage Zhou. He was like a shadow that disappeared into thin air. Damn it! The three of them had joined hands, and yet this person had escaped. If they couldn't obtain the key from Western Desolation, then all their efforts would have been in vain. Not only were the three ancient true sages furious, Qin Yu, who had just escaped, was already on his way back. Soon, the figure of Clan 327 appeared in his line of sight. The surrounding space continued to shatter. Numerous terrifying black holes, like gaping mouths, continuously attempted to tear apart the seal and swallow 327. The ancient true sage who attacked that race clearly had deep attainments in the Tao of space. Even though the race's experts were protecting 327, they were still injured. Most of them had cracks on their bodies, and their faces were pale white. This was good. If 327 was safe, then Qin Yu wouldn't have a chance to appear. What was even more perfect was that he didn't see 418 around. That's right. Qin Yu was the most familiar with him. Moreover, this person had a close relationship with 327. He was the best choice. The opportunity was right in front of him, and it might disappear in an instant. Therefore, he had to act now. Qin Yu moved. He instantly turned into 418 and flew over from afar. With a dark expression, he said, "Rogue cultivators of Broken World, if you dare to touch my race's young master, you will pay a heavy price." 327 frowned. "Why are you here?" Qin Yu was startled. He swept his eyes over Qin Yu's face and didn't notice anything wrong. Only then did he feel a little more at ease. He said, "Sir's safety cannot be compromised. I will follow you." 327 replied, "Don't worry, I'm fine." His tone was indeed very confident. Could it be that the clan still had a trump card? But since he had already made his move, there was no reason for him to give up halfway. Qin Yu took a deep breath and cupped his hands together. "Sir, the Broken World wandering cultivators have already planned this, and they will not give up so easily. Your safety is too important. So please hand over the key to me. Don't worry, young master. As long as I'm alive, the key won't have any problems." Opposite him, 327 frowned. "You want to take the key away? Just like how Sage Zhou lured the Broken World ancient true sage away?" Qin Yu nodded. "Yes." Just as he finished speaking, his heart skipped a beat. Without any time to think about anything else, Qin Yu stomped his feet and drew backwards. In the next moment, the space around him violently shook. It was like a giant invisible hand had grasped it, twisting it into a dough twist. Not good, he had been discovered. Qin Yu took a deep breath and made one final effort. With a panicked expression, he angrily said, "Sir, what is the meaning of this?" The surrounding cultivators were also stunned. They clearly didn't think that 327 would attack 418. After all, the latter had always been 327's most loyal supporter, and the two had a close relationship. 327 had no intention of explaining. His icy cold eyes locked onto Qin Yu, and he pointed a finger. "He isn't 418. Capture him." The moment his voice fell, before that cultivator could react, Qin Yu leapt forwards, his hand smashing outwards. His plan to copy the other key had failed. Since he couldn't deceive them, he could only take them by force. As for the other key, Qin Yu was determined to obtain it. 327 lifted a hand and punched out. In the blink of an eye, their fists collided. His complexion changed, and he spat out a mouthful of blood, his eyes stubbornly staring at Qin Yu. "It's you." The moment they collided, he could clearly feel the formidable killing might of Qin Yu's strength aimed at that clan. Like an icy cold blade, it instantly tore through his flesh and blood. It sank into his marrow, stirring up a wave of pain that caused his soul to shiver. This wasn't just because of the intense pain, but also because of fear, and the urge to destroy. Without any reason at all, a thought suddenly appeared in 327's heart. This person in front of him had to die, otherwise he would become a great calamity to his clan. Before, it was said that the reason why 327 didn't fear the encirclement of the ancient true saints of the broken world, and even wanted to borrow their strength to heavily wound the western wilds and regain the initiative, was because he still had a hidden card in his hand. Now, after discovering that Qin Yu was the murderer that killed so many of his clansmen, 327 activated it without hesitation. 2 elders kill him. He thought of suppressing and capturing Qin Yu alive to find out just what secrets he was hiding on Qin Yu's body that could cause such fatal damage to that clan. But this thought only appeared for a moment before he suppressed it. His intuition told him that killing Qin Yu was the best choice. Bang, bang. Terrifying fluctuations of strength erupted from 327's body. 2 beams of light shot out from his body, instantly turning into 2 human figures. Although they were blurry and illusory, these 2 figures of light released a horrifying aura that left one's heart racing. This was the strength of a true peak saint. It didn't avoid the damage brought about by the World Zeros, and was even stronger than the ancient true saints that attacked. Qin Yu sighed inwardly. He knew that the chances of him snatching it were already minuscule. Although these were only 2 projections in front of him, their strength was tyrannical. There was no meaning in staying here any longer. There was even a chance that he would be entangled by them and fall into danger. Without any hesitation, Qin Yu turned and left. His speed instantly erupted to the limit as he hurtled towards the chaotic battlefield. 327 screamed, "Elders, we cannot let this person go." Whoosh, whoosh, light howled as it chased after him. But for Qin Yu, who had grasped the ability to freely change his figure and aura, wanting to escape from this sort of rotten porridge battlefield was a simple matter. 2 figures of light floated high in the air. Although their faces were blurry, one could still feel their anger and gloominess. Right under their noses, their opponent had actually escaped. Qin Yu shuttled through the battlefield, his eyes flickering. It was clear his thoughts were rapidly turning. The first question was, how could 327 be so sure that he wasn't 418? If it was said that he had seen through his aura, Qin Yu wouldn't believe it. His transformation technique, when combined with the strength of his pre-celestial spirit, had reached a nearly flawless degree. Even a true saint wouldn't be able to sense him. The only possibility was that 327 had some sort of formidable treasure on him that could lock onto the flaws in Qin Yu's aura. But that wasn't right either. If there really was such a treasure, then he should have discovered it when Qin Yu first appeared. Why would he wait a moment before attacking? If he could deny this, then that meant that Qin Yu had exposed himself when he spoke. Thinking back to his conversation with 327, as well as the time when he suddenly attacked was after he confirmed that he wanted to take away the key, a sharp light exploded in Qin Yu's eyes. For 18, the other half of the key to open the ship was on his body. No wonder 327 had immediately turned hostile when Qin Yu asked for the key. If so, then everything could be explained. Shwa! Qin Yu shot into the skies, his eyes sweeping over the entire battlefield. This was because the most important thing right now was to find 418's position. As Qin Yu soared into the skies and searched for 418, the projections of the 2 clan elders helplessly flew back into 327's body. The amount of time they could maintain was limited. They had already wasted nearly half of their time just now, so they naturally couldn't stay outside any longer. And what was even more hateful was that after wasting so much precious time, it was actually useless. They could only watch helplessly on as Chinyu escaped. 327's face darkened. Anger and alarm interweaved in his eyes. Because Chinyu had been exposed, he suddenly felt that things had become strange. When the clan had sent a message, it had clearly been said that the one who had done all of this was the Western Wilderness. But in the current situation, Li Ijo had been badly battered by the Broken World's ancient true saint. So how could he still be in the mood to attack him? Pah! He suddenly lifted a hand and slapped his forehead. Where is 418? Immediately find him and bring him back. On that day, Chinyu had brought Yao Tao, Ling Xiao, and the others to find that clan and express their willingness to cooperate. Not long ago, 327 had personally handed the key to 418. This matter was an absolute secret that only the two of them knew about. So, Chinyu's guess wasn't wrong. The reason that 327 could determine that he was a fake was because of this. If the two clan elders weren't able to kill Chinyu, then he might have figured out the twists and turns involved. In other words, 418 was in a very dangerous situation right now. The Western Wilderness and that clan were in a great battle. In addition to that group of Broken World's ancient true saints, countless powerful auras wove together, forming a distorted force field. Within this range, all communication methods were temporarily blocked. Even if they managed to send a message, it would become incomplete. 327 tried several times to contact 418 through the clan's communication device, but he didn't receive a response. His complexion became even uglier. Go find 418. We must find him. Bang! With a loud explosion, the Western Wilderness cultivator revealed a look of unwillingness. With a large hole in his chest, his corpse slumped to the ground. 418 gasped for breath, a trace of fear on his face. This person had actually been hiding his strength. The two of them had been evenly matched. If it weren't for the other party revealing a trace of fear and hesitation at the critical moment, then the one to fall to the ground right now might have been him. He swept his eyes around. Because of the continuous battles just now, they had left the main battlefield and arrived at the edge. There wasn't any danger here. After confirming this, 418 took out the clan's communication device. It had been trembling just now, as if someone were looking for him. As he probed it with his divine sense, 418 was given a fright. There were many messages, and most of them were in an incomplete state. He hurriedly skimmed through them and roughly understood what had happened. A mysterious cultivator had impersonated him to attack 327, impersonating him to deal with 327. 418's complexion darkened. Without any time to think, he turned and rushed back to the battlefield. Although this matter didn't have anything to do with him, he still had to explain everything as soon as possible. Moreover, the messages were incomplete and he was worried about 327's condition. So you were here. A voice entered his ears. 418 came to a sudden stop. He swept his eyes around and a look of vigilance appeared on his face. 327, why are you here? The aura he sensed wasn't wrong. It was indeed 327. But for some reason he felt that something was wrong. 327 took a deep breath and coldly said, "Just now a cultivator disguised himself as you and attacked me. His aura imitation ability is extremely strong. If it weren't for my sharp senses, I would have been deceived. Where is the key? You must hide it well. The Broken World ancient true saint has attacked, and his goal is to steal the key. Only he and 327 knew of this matter." 418 relaxed. He nodded. "Don't worry, I will keep it safe." Bang! Before he finished speaking, 327 suddenly attacked. The timing he chose was just right. It was the moment 418 relaxed his guard. Wild strength surged out like a tide, instantly wrapping around him. 418's eyes widened, and he spat out blood from his nose and mouth, a look of horror on his face. You aren't 327. Chinyu punched out. Without hesitation, he stepped forwards and instantly chased after him. He lifted his hand and grasped out. Stop! An enraged roar came from behind him. The real 327 had arrived. At this time, his eyes were wide with anger, as if he wanted to cut Chinyu to pieces. Kacha! For 18's neck instantly shattered. The light in his wide eyes rapidly faded away. In the next moment, his corpse exploded. Blood howled in all directions and gathered together. Another key appeared. Chinyu grabbed it and turned his head, his icy cold eyes glancing at 327 and the others that were rushing towards him. Then he stepped forwards and rapidly flew away. Behind him, after 418 was killed, the sphere of blood that he had just condensed exploded with a loud bang. A massive amount of blood fog evaporated, revealing 418's pained and twisted face. It's him, it's him. 418 roared with all his might. Then the blood sphere condensed and exploded again. After repeating this process 3 times, there was less than a third of the blood left, and it smoothly vanished into the void. 327 looked at the place where the blood vanished, sorrow rising in his eyes. This was because he knew that without accident, he would have lost this friend forever. For 118 wouldn't die. He would be resurrected in the spring of rebirth. But at that time, the 418 that would return would only be a code name to him. Don't worry, I know it's him and I've remembered his aura. For 18, my friend, I promise you that I will find him and kill him, no matter how long it takes, no matter what price I have to pay. 327 spoke in a low voice. The sorrow and pain on his face were all covered up by an icy, cold, killing intent. He looked up at the 2 small world fragments, at the large ship that was quietly parked. No matter who this person was, after obtaining the key, he would definitely go to where the ship was. So, as long as he waited there, he would absolutely be able to find him. The projections of the 2 tribal elders could at least support one more attack. In addition to the tribe's secret source gathering technique, as long as this person appeared, there would be no way he could escape. Kill him. He had to kill him. Chapter 1380. To Chinyu, killing people wasn't a burden at all, much less killing someone from that clan. Thus, 327's hateful eyes and nearly tangible killing intent didn't affect Chinyu in the slightest. This was because he firmly believed that there was a great hatred between the 2 sides. Only when one side perished would the hatred end. Although there were some accidents, the process of obtaining the 2 keys was still considered smooth. The only thing that wasn't appropriate was that compared to his original plan of waiting for the harvest, Western Desolation and that clan hadn't used all their cards yet. If he wanted to smoothly open the ship, there would definitely be a great deal of trouble. This was a simple truth. The Western Desolation and that clan that had lost their keys would soon lock their focus onto the ship that had been soaked in blood sacrifices and was filled with the pungent smell of blood. Thus, taking the keys and borrowing the opportunity of the broken world ancient true sage to attack, Chinyu could be considered to have opened up a simple method. But after that, boarding the ship was added back. Perhaps everything in the world was like this. There was a balance between gains and losses. Chinyu wasn't in the mood to think about these philosophical questions. Or, even if he had the time, he wouldn't think about them. It was far too taxing on his brain. But whether he thought about it or not, the situation was the same. He still had to face the difficult problem of how to smoothly open the ship. But soon, Chinyu discovered that he didn't need to solve this problem himself. This was because the broken world ancient true sages that had already played the good guy once had turned around and delivered themselves to his doorstep. Of course, if he wanted to use them, he needed to have sufficient strength. Otherwise, they could crush him with a single finger. He simply didn't have the qualifications to negotiate conditions with them. Your methods are truly excellent. You easily played with Western Desolation and that clan in the palm of your hand. I am filled with admiration. A calm and gentle voice suddenly sounded out in Qin Yu's ears. His expression was calm as he said, "The saint's concealment ability is also very strong. You nearly managed to deceive me. Moreover, I am also curious. How did the saint lock onto my aura?" Space in front of him gently rippled like water. A black-haired, black-robed, middle-aged cultivator walked out. His face was like jade and his skin was fair and clear. But his eyes seemed to have been baptized by the vicissitudes of time, and they emitted a rich aura of time. Cupping his hands together, the black-haired, black-robed man smiled and said, "I am seamless. I just happen to be able to recognize people through some underhanded means." Ever since Qin Yu cultivated his body of rules and used the power of his pre-celestial spirit to display his body transformation, this was the first time someone had seen through his disguise. To say that it was some underhanded trick was clearly a load of bullshit, and an unbearably stinky one at that. Qin Yu swept his eyes over the person, who came and went straight to the point. "The seamless saint can call me virtuous 9 lives. For you to stop me now, could it be that you want to seize the key in my hand?" Seamless shook his head. "I did have this thought before, but after seeing Sir Virtuous Joshing, I realized that this wasn't appropriate." He said with a straight face, "Here, I apologize to Sir Sage Joshing first. It was really rude of us to have rashly interfered." Qin Yu had no expression. "It's fine. Rather, I must thank everyone for their help. Only then was I able to smoothly obtain the key." This was the truth, but it was clearly very rude to say it out loud, and it was also very disrespectful. But this was precisely Qin Yu's attitude. Extremely domineering. This bunch of old bastards didn't even go out and ask around. How many true sages have I hammered to death? For you to dare to pick my peaches and still be alive and kicking, consider yourself lucky. The seamless saint wasn't angered. This was the reality of the world. If you had the strength, you could do whatever you wanted. He smiled and calmly said, "Sir Virtuous Joshing, the reason I came here today is because I hope to cooperate with you and board that ship together." Qin Yu's eyebrows rose up. "On what basis?" The seamless saint said, "Because if we don't agree, even if you obtain the key, you will not be able to smoothly board the ship. I believe that Sir Virtuous Joshing is well aware that I am not exaggerating. Since I said it, I will definitely be able to do it." Qin Yu fell silent, but the truth was he didn't need to remain silent at all. This was because before the seamless saint even spoke, he had already guessed this. The basis of cooperation was nothing more than enticement and threats. If there was nothing that could entice Qin Yu, then it could only be threats. In this current situation, was there even a need to think about what the ancient true sages of the broken world would do? However, when it was time to remain silent, he still had to remain silent. At the very least, he had to show that he was in a difficult position and then take a step back. Qin Yu, who had the strength of a best actor, naturally had no problems displaying such emotions. His slightly furrowed brows and his slightly gloomy expression showed that he was currently in a bad mood and that he was struggling with his emotions. The seamless saint wasn't anxious. He smiled and waited. As long as one wasn't a fool, they would make the right choice. As someone who saw everything, the seamless saint naturally knew that this virtuous Joshing in front of him wasn't a fool. Indeed, after a few breaths of time, he took a deep breath and said, "All right, I agree to bring everyone on board. However, I will provide the key. As for how to board the ship, I will leave it to you to decide." This was Qin Yu's decision. Firstly, as the seamless saint said, it was basically impossible to avoid them and board the ship alone. Rather than starting a war because of this, he might as well temporarily cooperate with them. At the same time, he could borrow the strength of these ancient true sages to deal with Western desolation and that race. The seamless saint narrowed his eyes, and the smile on his face faded. "Virtuous Joshing, you should know that this isn't a simple matter." Qin Yu said, "I have done far more to obtain the key than you have. This is my only condition. If you don't agree, the seamless saint can try to take the key from my hands. Cold and hard to the extreme. Of course, the reason he dared to do this was because he had absolute confidence in his own strength. So what if they were ancient true sages that had secluded themselves from the world? In the Zeroth world, no matter how strong they were, there would definitely be restrictions. With Qin Yu's current strength, there was no need for him to fear them. If they truly turned hostile, he might not be able to destroy a group of ancient true sages. But if he could just escape, Qin Yu had complete confidence. The seamless saint was silent. He could feel Qin Yu's determination. After several breaths of time, he slowly nodded. All right, I agree to this. He lifted his hand and light rapidly surged in his palm, weaving together to form a strange rune. His eyes fell on Qin Yu. The seamless saint's eyes flashed. He said, in order to ensure that our cooperation goes smoothly and that no accidents occur, I ask that virtuous Juxing sign this. The stone pagoda's voice sounded out in Qin Yu's mind. Contract seal. I never thought that in this era there would still be someone who understands this. This seamless saint is truly an old monster that has lived for many years. He was probing master. He played a little trick in the process of condensing the contract seal, and I just happened to have some research on this. A thought fluctuation spread into Qin Yu's mind. After several breaths of time, Qin Yu's lips curved up. Does the seamless saint think I am ignorant? There is a problem with your contract seal. If you don't fix it, I won't sign it. The seamless saint laughed. He cupped his hands together and bowed. It was just a little test. After all, virtuous Juxing is far too unfamiliar to us. His smile was carefree and natural, without the slightest bit of awkwardness from being seen through. Disregarding everything else, just the thickness of his skin was something that needed to be tempered over time. He lifted his hand and lightly touched the contract seal. It trembled slightly, and there were some subtle changes within the intertwining lines. The stone pagoda said, "Haha, this seamless saint is not honest. He did change it, but he mixed in some sand. But it doesn't matter. Since he wants to play tricks, we will accompany him. When Master signs the contract, we will use the blood contract method. I can add a little trick inside. When he wants to do something, he will discover that he is in big trouble." Qin, you didn't doubt the stone pagoda's judgment. After a moment of hesitation, he flicked his finger. A drop of blood flew out and fell into the contract seal. It was instantly absorbed. Blood contract, the seamless saint frowned and immediately said, "Since virtuous Juxing is so sincere, I naturally cannot disappoint you." He flicked out a drop of blood as well. The moment it fused into the contract seal, the contract burst into a blood flame with a hum. It instantly burned away and disappeared. An invisible contract force descended, connecting the two together. There wasn't much to explain. It was mostly about cooperation and not harming each other. Otherwise, what would happen? The seamless saint cupped his hands together. "Virtuous Juxing, please wait for a moment. We need to make some preparations." After a slight pause, he smiled and said, "If there is someone you care about here, please inform them to leave as soon as possible, lest we accidentally injure them." Qin Yu raised his eyebrows and said, "Sure." The seamless saint smiled and didn't stay any longer. He turned around and left. His figure flashed and disappeared into nothingness. After confirming that the seamless saint had really left, Qin Yu flipped his hand and took out a jade slip. His divine sense moved and imprinted the information within. After several breaths, the jade slip gently vibrated and received the feedback from the other party. Pa! His 5 fingers forcefully crushed the jade slip. Qin Yu took a step forward and his figure whizzed away. A moment later, after leaving the battlefield, he found Yao Tao, Ling Xiao, and the others waiting here. "Greetings, Mr. Ninth." The 4 bowed and revealed a worried look. Qin, you could roughly guess what they were thinking. He said, "Everything went smoothly. I have already obtained what I wanted." Ling Xiao Xianji, Zhou and Ruanjing immediately smiled. At the same time, they sighed inwardly. Mr. Ninth was as sharp as ever. An ancient true saint who had secluded himself from the world had intervened and instantly thrown the situation into chaos. Even so, he hadn't been able to disrupt his plans. Looking at the 4 smiling faces in front of him, Qin Yu flipped his hand and took out the Netherworld Saint's great Tao fragment. He lifted his hand and divided it into 4 parts. The plan has been completed. I am a man of my word. This is your reward. In truth, even though they had guessed this, when Qin Yu really took out the great Tao fragment, Ling Xiao and the others were a bit embarrassed. This was because they felt that they hadn't done anything at all and that the entire plan had been arranged by Qin Yu. They felt that they were just unimportant extras, so this reward was far too great. But even though they felt embarrassed, it was impossible for them to refuse. This was because they couldn't suppress the ecstasy and excitement that came from their hearts. A true saint great Tao fragment was not some random cabbage that could be found on the side of the road. If they missed it today, they feared they would never be able to obtain it again. Glancing around, the 4 people respectfully bowed. Thank you, Mr. Ninth. The great Tao fragment entered their hands. After feeling its aura, even the calm and tranquil sword cultivators flushed red with excitement. No one knew who took it. At this time, it was impossible for them to calm down. In fact, the 4 of them even wished they could immediately go into seclusion to cultivate. Qin Yu said, "What happens next is not something you have the qualifications to participate in. There is a high chance that danger will descend. So, put away your things. My advice to you is to immediately leave. Of course, if you insist on staying, I won't stop you." Ling Xiao and the others didn't doubt Qin Yu's judgment at all. Since he said there was a high chance of danger, then it would surely be horrifying. As for whether or not this was a lie that Qin Yu had deliberately made up to scare them away so that others wouldn't divide up their harvests, was there such a need? Ling Xiao was the first to bow. Thank you for Mr. Ninth's reminder. I have come out to adventure for a long time, so I will directly withdraw from World Zeroth. Xianji, Zhou and Ruanjing nodded together. Yes, we have also decided to leave. They were well aware that the true struggle for good fortune in World Zeroth had yet to begin. But, looking at the participants, there was the Dark World and the mysterious races, as well as Qin Yu and the many ancient true saints that had secluded themselves from the world. If they joined this lineup, it would be the same as seeking death. It was important to know one's own limits. But Yao Tao didn't. She stared at Qin Yu and said, "I won't leave." With just these words, her attitude was extremely firm. Chapter 1381. In the end, Qin Yu wasn't able to break away from Yao Tao. He watched as Ling Xiao, Xianji, Zhou and Ruanjing left. Then he turned and said, "Yao Tao, you should already know who I am, just as I know who you are." Yao Tao smiled. "So you must be confused. Why do I continue to stay? Or perhaps I should say that I'm shamelessly sticking to you." Qin Yu remained silent. Facing this face, it was difficult for him to say anything too excessive. But his silence was enough to show his inner attitude. Ever since they met, besides the 3 strikes at the start, Yao Tao had appeared friendly and harmless. But Qin Yu still couldn't trust her. Yao Tao frowned in dissatisfaction. "You really have nothing to fear from being favored. Qin Yu, you are going too far." But this expression only lasted for a short moment before she couldn't help but smile. "But there's nothing I can do. Who told me to take a fancy to you? Once I set my mind on something, I won't give up so easily." Then she winked at Qin Yu. Look carefully. I look exactly like Peach Girl. It's not just my appearance, but every other part of my body is the same. If you don't believe me, you can touch me." Qin Yu was startled by her sudden movement and hurriedly took a step back. With a sullen face, he growled, "Damn it!" This crazy woman was really capable of doing anything she wanted to say. Yao Tao blinked. "Are you not satisfied with a touch? Do you want more?" In truth, I don't mind, but in this situation, it doesn't seem appropriate. What fucking inappropriate? Qin Yu clenched his teeth and turned to walk away. He could clearly see that Yao Tao was sticking to him no matter what. She was shamelessly sticking to him. The reason? Love at first sight was something that could be seen in the script. Taking a step back, even if such a thing did happen, it would never happen to Yao Tao. Although many things weren't explicitly stated, Qin Yu was well aware that Yao Tao had been able to perfectly conceal herself for so many years. This was enough to prove her wisdom and forbearance. Otherwise, did she really think that the Peach Garden and the Peach Garden Master were just decorations? Would she allow a soul seed avatar to grow to this point? Ignoring everything else for now, in Qin Yu's opinion, it was impossible for Yao Tao, who possessed such wisdom and forbearance, to be a woman who would shamelessly throw herself at him because of love at first sight. There was definitely a problem here. It was just that Qin Yu didn't know what it was. Wait for me. Yao Tao smiled and followed. As she looked at Qin Yu's back, a trace of appreciation flashed deep in her eyes. What a smart man. From the beginning until now, he had been probing. Perhaps he had already sensed something. Sometimes dealing with smart people was very comfortable, but most of the time it was not very comfortable. However, there was no other way. Who told him to choose him? He couldn't shake her off, and it wasn't the right time to fall out with her. He could only try to ignore her as much as possible. Fortunately, this woman had some self-awareness. She probably knew that she was not welcomed, so she kept quiet. Qin Yu was waiting for the seamless saint to send a message through the contract seal. At the same time, he was also a bit curious as to what methods this group of ancient true saints used to suppress the Western desolation and that race and smoothly board the ship. Perhaps it was because he was already prepared, but this wait didn't last for too long. The contract seal trembled and Qin Yu received the message. The Seamless Saint's message was very simple. He gave Qin Yu a set of spatial coordinates and asked him to come to this place to avoid being implicated. In addition, the Seamless Saint had reminded Qin Yu to have Ling Xiao and the others leave ahead of time. It seemed that this was a group suppression. Could it be that these old monsters wanted to directly crush the Western desolation and that race? One didn't need to be a genius to know that this was an incomparably difficult matter. Although this group of ancient true saints had displayed an extraordinarily strong strength, Qin Yu still didn't think much of it. However, since they wanted to attack, Qin Yu wouldn't stop them. It would be best if they succeeded. Otherwise, if both sides were wounded, the result wouldn't be unacceptable. Shua! Qin Yu's figure flashed, and he howled into the distance. Behind him, Yao Tao followed without a word. Facing his indifferent and rude attitude, she still maintained a smile on her face. She didn't reveal the slightest bit of dissatisfaction. The corners of his lips twitched. He secretly thought that this woman's tenacity was truly good. But the more she was like this, the more it showed that she was plotting something big. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a woman in this world that would mistreat herself like this. He wouldn't accept any arguments against this. The corresponding spatial coordinates weren't too far away, and they soon arrived. Although he was confident in his own strength, that didn't mean he could be negligent. Things like capsizing in a ditch were a common occurrence. Moreover, in Qin Yu's opinion, if several ancient true saints joined forces, they would be like a raging river, far more fierce than a ditch. Qin Yu stopped in the distance. As he sensed with rapt attention, he didn't forget to call out to the stone pagoda. After all, he was facing a group of old monsters, who knew whether or not they had some ancient tricks up their sleeves. When they were signing the contract, the Seamless Saint had already shown off his little tricks. If it weren't for the stone pagoda helping him, he might have already been tricked. But this time, there wasn't anything wrong. After carefully confirming and communicating with the stone pagoda, Qin Yu flew in. Yao Tao's low laughter echoed out from behind him. Although this woman didn't speak, the meaning behind her laughter was clear. Little brother, you've lived quite cautiously. Qin Yu's face darkened. He forced himself to ignore her. He still didn't know what Yao Tao's true personality was like, but looking at her current performance, it wasn't too much to say that she was someone who took advantage of others. Before he could figure out how to deal with her, he could only coldly deal with the atmosphere between them. Qin Yu didn't speak. Yao Tao's lips curved up. She didn't continue teasing him, instead quietly standing to the side. Faint traces of fragrance entered his nose and mouth. Qin Yu had noticed this fragrance before, but he had never breathed it in so clearly before. It came from Yao Tao's body. Although the smell wasn't too strong, there was a bit of lingering charm to it that was able to stir Qin Yu's mind. For instance, right now, he wanted to close his breathing, but he could faintly feel a sense of peace and joy in his heart. Qin Yu had to admit that he liked the smell of Yao Tao's body. This wasn't some method of seduction. Qin Yu was sure of this. It was like this woman, Yao Tao, was born to be in tune with him. This was an extremely dangerous thought. Qin Yu's mind remained calm and clear. At the same time, he also felt a bit of worry, because a similar feeling also existed in Peach Girl's body. Was it because they were completely the same as Ningling? Or was it because the main body and avatar belonged to the same body to begin with, so they shared some common attribute? Thus, even though his mind was clear that they were three different people, his body still instinctively felt a sense of closeness. Qin Yu closed his breathing, isolating himself from the fragrance. He closed his eyes, trying to calm his thoughts as he thought about what would happen next. Behind him, Yao Tao seemed to sense something. The corners of her lips curved up and a smile appeared in her eyes. In truth, the relationship between the main body and avatar was far closer than anyone knew. This was especially true when she became powerful to a certain degree and obtained a high degree of freedom. At that time, the boundaries between the two had already begun to blur. Then, why couldn't the position of the avatar and main body be swapped? She had been working hard towards this goal until she reached a bottleneck not too long ago. It seemed that she had reached the end of her path by relying on her own strength. Thus, when Yao Tao appeared in the world for the first time, she no longer concealed her existence. Firstly, it was because Peach Girl's condition made her very uneasy. Secondly, it was meaningless to continue hiding her growth. The yard master's resolute attitude, coupled with her own condition, made Yao Tao choose to retreat temporarily. However, after seeing Qin Yu, she had a new discovery. Yao Tao wasn't too clear about the specific reason, but her strong intuition told her that Qin Yu had some kind of power that could help her break through the bottleneck. She had to admit that this was the main reason why she displayed her shameless side and wanted to stick to Qin Yu no matter what. Of course, Qin Yu was outstanding enough to suit her taste and so on. These were also extremely important supporting factors. Yao Tao definitely wouldn't let go of such a Qin Yu. Qin Yu calmed his mind and focused on the present. Peach Girl noticed that he was holding his breath, and his mood became better. The broken world, the few ancient true sages finally took action. However, before they took action, there was a small interlude. Someone raised a different opinion about the seamless sage's decision. If you and I join forces, it won't be difficult to kill a true sage. Isn't the seamless sage's decision a little inappropriate? Today in the Zeroth world, there were 6 ancient true sages of the broken world. The one who spoke was the one who attacked 327 previously. He had extremely high attainments in the Tao of Space, and his strength was the highest among the 6 true sages. It was also because of this that he had the right to question the seamless sage. Of course, another important reason was that the other ancient true sage who cooperated with him to suppress 327 previously was his twin brother. Just as he finished speaking, a low voice sounded again. My brother is right. True sage seamless. It would be best if you could explain a little. The other 3 ancient true sages remained silent. Any team with more than 2 people, no matter what their nature was, would definitely have different factions and opinions within it. Seamless the true sage brothers and the other three. The 6 of them were divided into 3 factions. The seamless sage was the loneliest. However, the fact that he could be one of the 3 factions by himself was enough to prove his strength. After being questioned, he did not get angry. Instead, his tone was calm. Regardless of whether the name virtuous juicing is real or not, the only thing that we value is cultivation. Before locking onto this person, I had thought of snatching the key. However, the moment I saw him, I changed my mind. The elder brother frowned. Very strong. The seamless sage nodded and then shook his head. Indeed, very strong. If I were to act, I wouldn't have much confidence. However, if it was just that, the 6 of us would even dare to fight against a ruler descending, let alone suppress someone of the same level. After a pause, he seemed to be preparing his words before continuing, but I don't feel good. Or more accurately, my intuition tells me that if we were to fight against him, we might not be able to gain an advantage. The space instantly quietened down. Since they had joined forces, although they weren't extremely close, they were still relatively clear about each other's strength. The seamless sage's tyrannical cultivation was the key to him being able to act alone. Another reason was that he had cultivated some kind of ancient sacred art. His mental senses were extremely sharp, allowing him to avoid danger in advance. This point had already been proven more than once in the past. Hence, when the seamless sage mentioned this as the reason, no one could ignore it. The 3 true sages who had been silent all this while opened their mouths. If that's the case, then let's act according to the seamless sage's words. Today's opportunity is rare. Entering the Flaming Mountain is our first priority. Try to avoid any unexpected problems. That's right, I agree with the seamless sage's decision. 2 against 1. The true sage brothers who were proficient in the Tao of space snorted lightly and did not say anything else. The seamless sage did not have the slightest hint of pride after winning. His expression did not change at all. He nodded and said, "Since everyone has agreed, then let's begin." He turned around and was the first to leave. The true sage brothers each chose a nearby position. The remaining 3 ancient true sages naturally took up the other 3 positions. The 6 of them took up 6 different positions. The distance between them was the same. If someone were to stand in the sky and look at everything, they would realize that if they were to connect their positions in a straight line, it would form a standard hexagram. Not long after, the aura of the true sage of the 6 paths erupted without any reservation and blasted into the void, causing the space to tremble violently. Hence, a huge and incomparably dazzling hexagram actually slowly emerged from the trembling space. The area it covered was huge. With the big ship as the center point, it enveloped the 2 small world fragments and a large area around it. The clan that had gathered their strength and wanted to wait at the location of the big ship to find Qin Yu and kill him. The Western Wilderness saw that the clan had shrunk and gathered their strength. They vaguely guessed that the other party had lost the key. They cursed silently for being idiots and had no choice but to follow suit. The direct result was that almost everyone from the Little King's and Little King's sides were now within the coverage of the hexagram.